It's strange, isn't it, George, how little one troubles to find out about a town until one has to.
What gave rise to that not very profound remark, Jules?
It wasn't meant to be profound, it's just a fact.
Were you thinking of any town in particular?
I should think it's true of all towns, cities, villages. No, I was thinking of Cannes, as a matter of fact.
A beautiful place. I know it very well.
You've spent holidays there?
Yes, of course. Many times.
Maurice Denham as Jules Maigret and Michael Gough as Georges Simenon in Liberty Bar, translated by Geoffrey Sainsbury and adapted for radio by Aubrey Woods.
What comes to your mind when you think of Cannes?
Let's see. Cactus, palm trees, the blue of the sea I remember in particular. It never seems quite so blue anywhere else. The Provençal Hotel, very plush. I remember the air humming with the heat, the glare of the sunlight. People moving about like shadows, shadows in white suits, white dresses, with tennis rackets in their hands.
There you are, you see.
What do you mean, there I am?
Well, that's the Cannes I'd always known. And then one day I went there on a case, a murder case. Tactful handling required, according to headquarters.
Why?
Well, the fellow had been in the intelligence service during the war. William Brown was his name, Australian-born. Lot of money. No longer in the public eye, but still worth a headline or two on a slow news day. And that was to be avoided.
You were there in the summer, of course.
Yes. One of the local police inspectors, a young fellow named Boutique, met me at the station in a pearl grey suit with a carnation in his buttonhole.
Oh, very colourful.
Took me to the scene of the crime in a fiacre, if you please. There I was, trotting along the seafront in this horse-drawn carriage, sitting alongside a police inspector in a Panama hat. Not what one's used to at the Quai des Orfèvres.
But very restful, very Cannes.
Well, that's what I thought. It was only later I found Cannes had back streets, dingy little houses, seedy little bars. But at the beginning it was just like the start of a holiday.
The fellow was murdered, or rather the body was found, a mile or so along the coast here at one of the poorer villas on the Cap d'Antibes.
I didn't think there were any poorer villas on the Cap d'Antibes.
There aren't many, sir. This one was probably beautiful at one time, but they let it go.
They?
Brown and his 2 women.
He lived with 2 women?
Yes, for the past 10 years. One of the women was his mistress, Gina Martini. The other one's her mother. There was no servant. Sun's not in your eyes, is it, Chief Inspector? I can always pull the awning down a bit.
No, it's very pleasant. Well, go on, tell me the facts.
There's a garage in the garden where Brown used to keep his car. Shabby old thing. He used it chiefly for shopping in Cannes.
Yes?
For 3 days, however, the car was left standing night and day in front of the house. People noticed, but nobody bothered. It was nobody's business. And it wasn't till Monday evening...
What's today? Thursday, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right, go on.
On Monday evening, a butcher was driving past in his van when he saw the car start. You can see his statement, sir. He was coming up behind it, and first of all he thought Brown must be drunk as the car started kangarooing along. Then it went steadily for a moment or two, but at the first bend it crashed into the rocks by the roadside.
How far was that?
50 or 60 yards, no more. Well, the butcher pulled up, but before he could walk across to it, 2 women got out of the car and started running towards the town.
Were they carrying anything?
3 suitcases. It was getting dark. The butcher didn't quite know what to do. In the end, he simply drove past the women and reported what he'd seen to the first policeman he came across. Word was sent out, and a watch was kept. Before long, they were spotted making for the station.
Had they still got their suitcases?
They discarded one on the way. It was found yesterday, hidden in some bushes.
What explanation did they give?
First of all, they said they were hurrying off to see a sick relation at Lyon. But the chap who caught them was shrewd enough to ask them to open their luggage. And what should he find but a packet of bearer bonds and about £800 in Bank of England notes?
So he arrested them?
Yes. Quite a crowd collected, so he escorted the 2 women first to the police station and then to the local prison where they were locked up for the night.
The house was searched?
First thing next morning. At first they found nothing. The 2 women pretended they didn't know what had become of Brown. Finally, a gardener pointed out a place in the garden where the earth had recently been dug up. And a couple of inches deep, they found Brown's body fully dressed.
And what did the women say to that?
They changed their tune at once. What they said now was that 3 days before their flight, Brown had driven up to the house. They were surprised he didn't put the car away in the garage at once. Gina looked out of the window and saw him staggering up the garden path. Well, thinking he was drunk, she started shouting at him. Then he fell full length on the doorstep.
Dead, of course.
As dead as a doornail. When we examined the body, we found he'd been stabbed between the shoulder blades.
And they kept him in the house for 3 days without saying a word about it?
Exactly, sir. In the end, they buried him and took to their heels.
Taking the money and the bearer bonds.
And all the valuables they could carry. You can understand the car standing 3 days on the road. Gina could hardly drive at all. She'd had a few lessons, but wasn't up to backing the car into the garage.
Was there any blood in the car?
Not a sign. But then they swear they washed it off.
Well, is that all?
Yes, sir. Except that they're furiously indignant and demand to be released.
Do they, indeed?
Ah, there's the villa.
I think I'd like to take a look around on my own, if you'd let me have the keys.
Certainly, sir.
Look, why don't you go and collect the two men and bring them over here? Then I can have a chat with them on their own home ground. Put them at their ease a bit more than my going over to the prison. May get more out of them that way.
Right you are, Chief Inspector. I'll drop you off here and bring the ladies back as soon as I can.
Come in, ladies.
I hope the police have at last read.
Yes, of course, of course. Now do come in and make yourselves at home. I just wanted us to have a little chat, the three of us.
Have you found out anything?
Take care, Gina.
Tell me, what did Brown usually do with himself in the evening?
We seldom went out. As a rule, my daughter read while I
Let's
sat in
talk about him.
He used to listen to the wireless. The fonder one is of real music, the more one hates
Was
it.
his health good?
Oh, if only he'd listened to me, he'd never have been bothered by his liver or his kidneys.
Now, you told the police he drove up just after 5, walked up the garden path, and then fell on the doorstep.
Yes, just as if he were dead drunk. I shouted out to him from the window that he could come into the house when he was sober again.
Did he often come home drunk?
Oh, if only you knew the patience we've had to show during the 10 years
Did he often come home drunk?
Whenever he went off on one of his bouts, that's what we used to call them.
And these bouts were frequent?
Generally once a month.
How long did they last?
Oh, he'd be away 3 days, 4 days, sometimes even longer.
And when he came back, he'd be filthy dirty and soaked with drink.
But you didn't stop him going off again the next time.
Well...
Oh, surely the two of you had some influence over him.
We couldn't stop him going to get the money.
The money? I see. And you couldn't go with him?
This is all very painful, Chief Inspector, but I must explain the situation. You see, we weren't married. Of course, William always treated me as his wife, even to the point of having Mamma to live with us. And I was known to the people here as Madame Brown. Otherwise, I should never have been accepted.
Neither should I.
So that was why you let him go off every month, to get his money. Where did it come from?
He never told us.
I tried to follow him, but he always shook me off. All I can tell you is that he used to leave the car in a garage in Cannes.
So he might have gone on by train to Paris or anywhere else for that matter.
Perhaps.
Or he might have stayed all the time in Cannes.
Though we never heard of anybody seeing him there.
And it was after one of these bouts that he was killed.
Yes. This last time he was away a whole week.
Did you find the money on him?
Yes, the same as usual. 2,000 francs.
If you ask me, I think his income was much bigger than that. 4,000 a month, or even 5. Only he preferred to squander the rest of it by himself, leaving the merest pittance for us.
Were there many rows?
Oh, hardly ever. Though I must say William had a most aggravating habit of simply ignoring you when you spoke to him.
And then somebody killed him. Could it have been as he came into the garden? But you say you found blood in the car.
We've no reason not to tell the truth.
And you didn't see anybody, so someone killed him elsewhere. Or rather wounded him, and instead of going to a doctor or to the police, he came up here. You carried the body indoors?
We couldn't very well leave it outside.
Why did you keep it dark? I'm sure you had good reason.
Yes, monsieur, very good reasons indeed, and I'd like you to know them. Well, in any case, you'll find out all about Brown sooner or later. He was already married long ago in Australia. He was Australian himself, you know, and his wife's still living. Well, for reasons best known to herself, she would never divorce him.
If she'd heard of her husband's death, she could have seized everything, as she was legally his wife.
Exactly. She'd have had the law on her side if she wanted to take the house and all that was in it and just put us out onto the street.
So you hesitated. For 3 days you were turning it over in your mind while the body was lying here.
No, only for 2 days. Then we buried him.
And then you thought things over for another 24 hours and finally gathered up what you could and... But where were you making for?
Anywhere. Brussels, perhaps, or London.
Had you ever driven the car before?
No, but I once had a few lessons, and I thought perhaps I might manage it.
Did he have a coat of any sort with him?
Yes. This old Macintosh. But he wasn't wearing it. It was in the car.
There's some change in the pocket here. You'd better have it.
Thank you.
What are these?
Well, I'm sure I don't know.
Slot machine counters. 10 of them. I wonder where he got those. Madame Martini, do you have the address of that garage where Monsieur Brown used to leave his car?
Well, he used to bring the car in one day and then fetch it again a few days later.
Drunk?
Yeah, that's how I knew him best.
And you've no idea where he was?
What, while the car was here? No, not the slightest.
What did you make of him?
I never gave him a thought.
Do all the bars round here have slot machines?
No, they're prohibited 2 months ago. Oh, the only place you'll still find them is in those little bars behind the repair yards. They don't bother there, and the police don't bother them.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, try the Liberty Bar.
The Liberty Bar?
Yeah, and give Fat Jar Jar a hug from me while you're at it. If you can get your arms round her, that is.
Hello? Anybody there?
We're through in the back room. What you waiting for?
Oh, good afternoon, Sasha.
You've taken long enough to get here. Sit down. You don't mind if Sylvie and I go on with our lunch?
No, not at all.
I've never seen you before. Where are you from? Nice? Antibes?
Paris, police judiciaire.
Oh, so it's true, is it?
What?
That William was some kind of important person.
Who are you, Sylvie?
Oh, that's William's goddaughter.
Goddaughter?
Oh, not in a religious way. He wasn't at her baptism. In fact, I'm not sure there was one. Was there, Sylvie?
Certainly there was.
William took to her. She used to tell him all her troubles, and he'd do his best to comfort her. Have you had your lunch?
Oh, yes,
If not, you've only to say so. We don't stand on ceremony here.
How long have you had this bar?
I dare say it's 15 years now.
Do you have many customers?
I don't want many. The ones who do come here are more friends than customers. Like William. They know I'm alone and I like a bit of company, and they drop in to split a bottle with me. Get a glass for the inspector, Sylvie.
Oh, all right, Shasha.
Don't take any notice. She adored him, so it's been a dreadful blow.
She sleeps here?
Sometimes not.
What does she do?
You mean you don't know?
Well, I think so. But did William know?
Everybody knows.
How long have you known him?
Seems like I've known him always. I remember him in the old days. Owned a yacht. Used to come down here all dressed up in a white cap with a pretty girl on each arm. When my husband died, I shut this place for a month. Then the next winter, I spent 3 months in hospital with peritonitis, and when I come out, I found someone had gone and opened another place bang opposite. Since then, it's been quiet enough here, but now I don't bother.
When did you meet William again?
He turned up one day, out of the blue. We got tight and sat up telling stories half the night. In the end, I put him to bed on the divan. He was too far gone to get home. Since then, he's been coming to see me from time to time.
How long did he stay?
Oh, 3 or 4 days, mostly.
How did you get to know her, Sylvie?
Oh, poor thing. She come in one night with a couple of fellas, commercial travellers, some such. They were drunk. She tried to get 'em to go back to some hotel with her, but you could tell she didn't know how. In the end, they got blind drunk and left without her. She started crying, so I took her in with me. Now she stays when she wants to. Quite happy.
Was she and William...
Never.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were there.
It's all right. Here you are.
Oh, thank you. Now, what time did William leave here last Friday?
Directly after lunch. We finished about 2, like today.
Did he say where he was going?
Never did.
Were you here?
Oh, I left about 5 minutes before.
To go where?
To work.
Down to the harbour?
There, or anywhere.
According to the 2 women up at the house, he didn't get there until after 5. Did he go to other bars like this?
Not as far as I know. Anyway, there aren't any other bars like this.
What attraction do you think Brown found there?
In Liberty Bar? Let me ask you a question. Ever heard of a drink called gentian?
Yes, the drunk's last resort. Isn't very alcoholic, but when you've spent a lifetime soaking up every drink imaginable, it's about the only thing you can still get a kick out of, right?
Yeah. Liberty Bar was the same thing for Brown. No vice, or at least no malice. A place where nothing had to be explained. The last refuge of a man who sampled everything and lost everything.
And as a reaction, of course, against those other 2 women. And against the respectability and the boredom, the straight-laced Australian sheep farmers.
Oh, he embarrassed them. I realized that the moment his son turned up. Although, apparently, it was common knowledge around the Riviera that the son wasn't as straight-laced as he'd have liked everyone to believe.
He had a mistress tucked away somewhere, didn't he? Like father, like son.
Oh, but he was very discreet, not like father. A widow installed in a little villa in Cap Ferrat. Whenever he left his hotel to visit her, he went out and came back in again by the staff entrance.
So as not to scandalize the hall porter.
Something like that. But this time his mind wasn't on his merry widow. All he could think of was getting his father buried as quickly as possible and getting back to his money-making. I saw him in the suite he'd taken in the Provençal Hotel.
Take a seat, will you, Chief Inspector?
Thank you.
Are you handling this case?
Yes.
It's an absurd affair, isn't it?
Oh, not so absurd as all that.
I mean, annoying.
It's always annoying to get a knife between your shoulder blades. Still more when you die of it.
You know, perhaps, that my father led a rather wild life.
He certainly had a mistress.
That's not all. Far from it. I'm sorry to have to speak like this, but if you don't understand the situation, you may put your foot in it. My father came to Paris many years ago without my mother. He nearly ruined us. Eventually, my mother managed to take the business out of his hands. She suffered a lot.
And it was she who put the business on its feet again?
With my uncle, yes.
Her brother, I suppose.
Yes. My father seemed to have lost all sense of dignity. We don't need to go into details, I'm sure you understand.
One question, Mr. Brown. Where were you last Friday?
Last Friday? What's on your mind?
Nothing. I simply asked you where you were.
Has that any bearing on the case?
Perhaps it has, perhaps it hasn't.
I was in Marseilles. One of our ships was arriving, the Glasgow.
You didn't see your father?
I didn't.
One more question. Who paid your father his allowance, and how much was it?
I did. 5,000 francs a month.
Thank you. Good evening.
Is that all?
Yes, that's all, thank you.
Well, I had this ready. I thought some police charity might like.
I expect I shall see you at the funeral. Good evening.
Thank you for letting Sylvie and me know about the funeral, Inspector. I wouldn't have liked to have missed
Come on, Zsa Zsa, let's be getting back.
Where's his son gone to?
Oh, he's over there, just getting into that taxi.
He didn't hang about, did he?
Neither did your friend.
What friend?
The man who was speaking to you before we went into the church.
Oh, Joseph. He brought us here. He's a waiter at the casino, and he's Sylvie's gentleman.
He's a friend.
I see. Excuse me, will you? Madame Martini. Madame?
Chief Inspector, who are those women over there?
No, I don't know exactly.
They oughtn't to have been allowed. Where do they spring from, creatures like that?
And his son's here as well, isn't he? Oh, I suppose he'll be wanting to come to the house.
Well, he may, but I don't know.
We must be getting along. We've got a lot to do. Goodbye, Inspector.
Goodbye, ladies.
So they're the ones. Was he really married?
Where's Sylvie?
She's gone on. A funny funeral. I don't know why, but I'd never have thought it would be like that. I couldn't have cried if I'd tried to. It's as if it wasn't a real funeral at all.
Are you the proprietor of this hotel?
Yes, sir. Oh, here, sit down. You look worn out.
Yes, I am. Have you any idea how many small hotels there are in this town?
Oh, I see. Police. Now, I didn't envy you your job. Well, who are you looking for?
Oh, this man here. Between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock last Friday.
Oh, sorry. Never seen him.
Or this girl?
Oh, yes, that's Sylvie. She's upstairs.
Alone?
No, but they haven't ordered drinks. They shouldn't be long. Do you want a drink?
No, thanks. Who's the fellow with Sylvie?
Oh, I don't know him. Came in that taxi parked outside. Sylvie got here a few minutes later. The taxi driver said he's been taking him around all day. Took him to a funeral this morning. Then he brought him here.
Did he? My God. Hello, Sylvie.
Inspector?
Is your friend dressing?
Please, someone's expecting me.
Well, he'll have to wait.
What do you want with me?
Is Harry Brown still upstairs?
I don't understand.
No, give me that bag.
No.
You usually carry that much money around?
Please.
Look, any more fuss and I'll put you in handcuffs. Oh, damn, is that...
Yes, it is, I'm afraid, sir. The man that was upstairs.
Well, how the hell did he get out?
Well, there's a side door. Some people are rather shy.
Now you tell me. Can I use your phone?
Yes, of course.
Is Joseph waiting for you somewhere?
Joseph?
Your friend?
Yes.
Or shall we say your protector? We'll go and pick him up and then put the two of you in cells for a while. Hello, Maigret here. Send someone over to the Provençal Hotel and ask Mr. Harry Brown, politely but firmly, not to leave the hotel until I've seen him. If necessary, stop him going.
Inspector. Excuse me a moment.
Yes.
That's all, James. You can take the telephone into the next room.
Yes, sir.
Read this, Inspector. That's what I paid Sylvie 20,000 francs for.
Thank you. Huh? Your father's will?
Yeah. I must first of all explain a few things to you. Before his marriage, my father owned a very large estate in Australia. When my mother married him, she brought with her an estate that wasn't much smaller. And with the union of the two properties, my father became the biggest sheep breeder in the country. Then later, there was a lawsuit here in France, and he came over to see it through.
He came alone?
Alone.
And he never went back?
No. Proceedings dragged on. For 2 years, he kept putting off his return.
Who looked after things out there?
Well, everything was going to pieces. Until at last, my mother took over the business. For a long time, my father lived on credit, and we paid his debts.
And then you stopped paying?
We never left him destitute. But the more we paid, the more he spent. So there was nothing for it but to cut him right down to 5,000 francs a month.
Apart from the allowance you made your father, did you have any contact with him?
Not directly.
Indirectly?
Any communication was sent through the bank that paid the money.
A bank in Cannes?
Yeah.
And did you communicate with him just before his death?
The bank manager saw him on our behalf.
The last time he drew money?
Yes. Allow me to explain. The situation between my father and the family was never really cleared up. He was still fighting for what he claimed were his rights.
So there's a lawsuit still on?
Yeah. It's been going on these last 10 years.
And all the family was against him?
All, without exception.
Well, what were you offering him to fade away and leave you in peace?
£10,000.
Would he have been better off with that than with his allowance?
Decidedly. Particularly if he'd bought an annuity.
Then why did he refuse?
To annoy us. It had become an obsession with him. He was absolutely determined not to leave us in peace. He even told the bank manager that he'd taken steps to ensure our troubles continuing if he died.
How?
He'd made a will. You're holding it now. And who do you think were his heirs? 4 women.
Did you know the terms of the will?
Until today, I knew nothing about it. Well, soon after I got back from the funeral, a man asked to see me.
Was his name Joseph?
He didn't say. He showed me a copy of the will and said I could buy the original for 20,000 francs if I went to a certain hotel.
You mean to tell me that you've been conspiring to destroy a will?
The will's not destroyed. It's in your possession. Do as you think fit. I shall be staying here until you give me permission to leave.
Who the hell is she?
Are you looking for Jar Jar?
Oh, yes.
Who are you?
Inspector Maigret.
Ah, then I've got a message for you. She'll be back in a few minutes and asked if you'd mind waiting. I'm to let you in. There you are. Make yourself at home, she said. The switch is on the right.
Thank you. Hello, Provençal Hotel? Chief Inspector Maigret. Has Monsieur Brown received any visitors? A fat woman, when? Has she left? Oh, no, it's all right. She's here. Good evening, Jaja.
Oh, there you are. Sorry I was so long. Oh, dear. My legs. I've just seen that poor child Sylvie down at the police station. There's nothing bad about her, you know. It's always those that have to pay for the others. Did you get yourself a drink?
Yes, thank you, I did.
Give me one, there's a dear.
Yeah.
Bring it through into the bedroom. And the bottle. I must go and change these shoes. Oh, the place is in an awful state, but don't take any notice.
No, I won't. Here's your drink.
That's better. You know, it fairly turned me up to see Sylvie there.
Did William sleep in here?
It's the only room there is, apart from what you've seen through there.
He slept where? On the divan?
Sometimes I did.
And Sylvie?
Whenever she was here, William would have the divan and she'd share the bed with me.
And what did she say to you when you saw her at the police station?
She gave me 20,000 francs for safekeeping. I asked her where it came from. She said she didn't know, except that it was Joseph's doing.
Has she been a long time with Joseph?
They don't live together. She met him somewhere, not here. He said he could do her a good turn and put her in the way of business.
And what was the business he sent you on this evening?
To see William's son, Harry, at the Provençal.
What were you to say to him?
That he was to get Sylvie released. Otherwise...
Well, otherwise what?
Just otherwise. I realized then Joseph had been up to something.
Well?
God, give me time to think. With all this trouble, my head's spinning. Give me another drink.
No, in a minute.
Oh, let me have something to drink. I'll tell you everything.
All right. There you are, then. Now, you saw Harry Brown?
Yes. He said if I annoyed him again, he'd have me locked up too. But I'm not stupid. I knew that once he'd heard about the will...
Wait a minute. You knew about the will?
It was last month William spoke about it. We were here, all 4 of us.
Not you and he, Sylvie and Joseph?
Yes. We'd been having a few more than usual. It was William's birthday, and we got talking about all sorts of things. He even said something about Australia.
Oh, what did he say?
That he was tickled to death to think of what they'd say out there. Then he pulled the will out of his pocket and started reading it aloud. He said he'd had it all drawn up by a lawyer.
A month ago, you say? Did Joseph know about Harry Brown then?
Oh, you never can tell with him. Being a waiter, he picks up all sorts of things.
And you think he might have told Harry?
Supposing he did. Supposing Joseph had been and told him everything. And supposing Harry had said that he'd like to have that will, but what use would it be to him while William was alive?
What do you mean?
Well, he could easily go and make another, couldn't he? But once he was dead,
What do you reckon William would have been doing between 2 o'clock and 5 that Friday afternoon? Sylvia had left just before him, hadn't she? Do you think they might have...
Who?
Sylvia and William.
That they might have done what?
How should I know? Met somewhere, perhaps? After all, Sylvia's young and William... Oh, they might have met somewhere. Joseph would have been in hiding, and at the right moment he'd jump out and stab William in the back.
What?
Harry Brown suggests the crime, Sylvie decoys William to the spot, Joseph does the rest. And then Harry is told to bring the money to the hotel, and when Joseph gets arrested, he sends you off with a message for Harry to say he'll spill the beans if he's not set free.
That's it. Yes, that's it. And me thinking, no, it's not true, it can't be. It's not true. Not Sylvie.
Now put that bottle down. Charger! Oh, God, no. Something to tie it up. This'll have to do. You stupid old woman. How did you have to do that? It's not too bad for the moment. Come on. Hello, police here. Emergency. Send a doctor to Liberty Bar. A woman has cut her wrist. Liberty Bar. For the love of God, get a move on. How will she be, Doctor?
Well, it's hard to say. She'll never know old age, that's for certain. Well, I can't do anything else. At least not until the morning. Then we can see about getting her moved into hospital.
If she'll go.
Yes. Well, we'll see about that. Well, good night, Inspector.
Good night, Doctor. Thank you.
Don't leave me. I'm frightened. Where's he gone to? Where's that little man? I don't want
It's
to...
all right, Joshua. Just be quiet.
Who's that? Why is there no light in the bar? What's happened?
No, don't make a noise. Oh, now, don't worry. I'm not leaving you. Come in. I've got Sylvie here.
Shasha! Oh, my poor Shasha!
Go away.
But Shasha,
It's her fault, that filthy little whore. I hate her. Do you hate her?
Lie down, Joshua.
I shan't let her get away with it.
Look, do you want a drink?
Now that it's all up with me, you don't care how much I drink, do you? It's all her fault.
What do you mean it's her fault?
She's talked. I know she's talked. Or they wouldn't have let her out. Joseph didn't send me off to see Harry Brown. I went on my own.
Yes. Joshua, it wasn't William who slept over there on the divan, was it?
No, it wasn't. He slept here in my bed. He came to Liberty Bar for my sake and nobody else's. You might have guessed that long ago.
I guess that you loved him.
And he loved me. He was happy here. He told me so over and over again. I never suspected a thing. I've been a fool. Sylvie nowhere to go. I took her in out of the kindness of my heart.
I never meant to hurt you. He wanted me to know.
Yes. Blame it onto him. Just look at her. She wanted to get him, and Joseph wanted her to. That pimp of hers. Didn't take him long to guess that William had money. If he hadn't thought of it before, there was the will. Joseph stole the will from this room. William had talked about it. Joseph knew a will was usually good for a bit of blackmail. Then he set Sylvie onto him.
No, that's not how it happened.
One day, I saw her giving William a nod as she went out after lunch. She'd only been gone a couple of minutes when William followed her. As soon as he'd left, I put my things on. Do you know where she waited for him?
At the hotel?
The Beau Séjour, yes. I wanted to go in and knock on their door and beg Sylvie to give him back to me. There was a shop on the corner that sold kitchen knives, and while they were up there, I went in. I bought a knife. Then they came out, those two. He bought her some chocolate. Then she went off and he went to the car. I knew the road he'd been going along, so I went and waited. As soon as he saw me, he stopped and opened the door. There was nobody about, and I shouted at him, "I've got something for you, and it's for her too."
And you stabbed him?
I can't remember what happened next. I suppose he pushed me out and slammed the door. There was no knife in my hand. I must have dropped it in the car. When I woke up next morning, I could hardly believe it. Oh, William. My poor William.
It isn't true.
Come out into the bar.
It isn't true. I must make you understand. I love Zsa, and I'd never have done it if he hadn't begged me and begged me. Well, he kept on begging me, and how could I refuse him when every night with other men I...
Keep your voice down.
Oh, let her hear. When she thinks it over, she'll understand. And when I did go with him, I didn't even want Joseph to know. I was afraid he'd take advantage of it.
Was that the first time?
The only time. It's quite true about the chocolates. He was mad, treated me as if I hadn't been a tart.
And that's all?
I'd no idea Zsa killed him. I thought it might have been Joseph. I was afraid. When he told me to go to the Beau Séjour where somebody was to bring me some money. I didn't know who it was till he came into the room. What else could I do? Is Zsa badly hurt?
No. Now, I think she's sleeping. Now, stay with her. And when she wakes up, you'll tell her that I've gone. For good. You'll tell her that she's been dreaming, that she's had a nightmare.
I don't understand. And Joseph?
You love him?
One has to have a man.
And William?
Oh, that was different. He wasn't one of us.
Now lie low for a while. We'd better all forget about Liberty Bar.
Thank you. Zsa, I tell you, she's the best woman in the world.
I know. Now look after her, Sylvie, for as long as she needs it. There's the will, Mr. Brown.
You mean
It's yours. After all, you paid 20,000 francs for it.
We're only too anxious to treat them generously. I was thinking of 100,000 francs to each of them. I hope you understand. It's not the money we're concerned about, it's the scandal.
Oh, I understand.
In France...
Yes?
Well, in France, scandal doesn't matter as much as in my country.
No. No, there was one other thing.
Yeah?
I believe you have a friend, a lady whom you visit in Cap Ferrat.
Does this have any bearing upon the case?
Well, only indirectly, and of course the case is closed. But your father had what we in France would call a love affair with those women. I'd be interested to know how you think your Australian acquaintances would refer to your friendship with the widow of Cap Ferrat.
I shall report you to your superiors for that remark, Chief Inspector.
No, Mr. Brown. After all, I did not make the remark as a policeman. It was unofficial. As I said before, the case is closed. That will you have there never existed. Your generous gifts to the four ladies will be greatly appreciated. And there'll be no scandal either here in France or in your country. Good morning, Mr. Brown.
So your report was what? Murder by person or persons unknown?
And that let everyone carry on living as usual. Or dying as usual. Zsa Zsa only had a few more months to live.
Depending on how much she drank.
Exactly. This wasn't only a love story, it was a drink story.
They must have made a good pair, William and Zsa Zsa.
Oh, yes.
Both getting on a bit, both feeling a bit lost, then finding each other. Kindred spirits, able to keep in step with each other, glass for glass. She must be dead too by now. I wonder if the 100,000 francs arrived in time for her to enjoy any of it.
Oh, I hope so.
So do I.
Anyway, it's over now. Whatever happened, it was a poor little love story with a rotten ending.
In Liberty Bar by Georges Simenon, translated by Geoffrey Sainsbury and adapted for radio by Aubrey Woods, Maigret was played by Maurice Denham and Simenon by Michael Goff. Boutique, Kenneth Shanley. Madame Martini, Shirley Dixon. Gina Martini, Diana Eden. Zsa Zsa, Margot van der Berg. Sylvie, Eva Haddon. Brown, Kevin Brennan. And other parts were played by Rod Beecham. The play was produced and directed by Christopher Venning.
Simenon's Maigret, a series of plays based on the novels of Georges Simenon.
Another hot day, Jules. Paris can be stifling this time of year.
Empty, too. The lucky ones have folded their tents and stolen away to the beaches.
Are you getting away this year?
Oh, I doubt it. I get a holiday every other year, if I'm lucky. It's too busy. Not many sea breezes find their way to the Quai des Orfèvres. Georges, where were you born?
Liège.
Of course, I'd forgotten.
Why?
Well, you were born inland, like me. Now, I have a theory that for us and people like us, the seaside never seems quite real. It's an artificial, carefree world where nothing very serious can happen.
You should know better than that.
I should indeed. As a policeman, I do, but that's another matter. Actually, my last visit to the coast was purely professional. The setting couldn't have been more charming, but serious things had happened there, all right. There's nothing more serious than murder.
Maurice Denham as Jules Maigret, Michael Goff as Georges Simenon, and Amy Delamain as Valentine Besson in Maigret and the Old Lady, translated by Robert Brain and adapted for radio by Betty Davis.
It happened at Étretat, a pretty little coastal town. It was late in the season, September in fact, and once more I hadn't had a holiday. So I was very drawn to the idea when Valentine Besson asked me to go down.
Wasn't she connected with Ferdinand Besson, the Jouva products man?
That's right. They're old-fashioned now, but I can remember my mother using Jouva cream. Probably yours did, too. Ferdinand made a packet out of them anyhow, and Valentine was his widow.
A rich old lady.
Well, not all that rich, actually, but she was beautifully turned out. And she was the prettiest, daintiest old lady you can imagine. Snow-white hair and eyes so blue they dazzled you. Young eyes. She told me somebody was trying to poison her.
I'm not mad, Inspector, and I'm certain I'm not even mistaken. May I tell you the whole story?
Please do, madame.
Since my husband died 15 years ago, I lived alone at Étretat. That is, not quite alone. I had a maid, a local girl, Rose.
Had? She's left your service?
No, she's dead.
When did she die?
On Sunday night. She was poisoned. And I'm sure it was meant for me.
Tell me about it.
Rose came from Ypres, a fishing village near Étretat, and she'd been with me a long time. Every night she brought me a sleeping draught. I suffer from insomnia, and I've been taking it for 20 years. On Sunday night it tasted very bitter. I thought I'd made a mistake mixing it, so I left it and told Rose to take it away.
And did she?
Yes. She must have drunk it. The glass was found empty in her room.
I see. When exactly did she die?
At 2 in the morning I heard her groaning. I got up, and so did my daughter.
I thought you said you lived alone.
Sunday was my birthday. My daughter Arlette came down from Paris and stayed the night. We found Rose in convulsions, and by the time the doctor arrived she was dead. He said it was poison. Arsenic.
The local police are investigating?
Yes, Inspector Castaigne from Le Havre.
Ah, I know him. What does he say?
Nothing. Yet. And you see, Inspector, I came to Paris because, although you don't know me, I know you. I've followed your distinguished career for years. I have lots of newspaper cuttings about you at home.
Oh. Excuse me. Maigret.
Can you speak to me in my office for a moment?
At once?
Yes, if it's possible.
Right, I'll come straight round, sir. Excuse me, madame. The chief of police wants to speak to me urgently. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Ah, hello, Maigret. Would a few days by the sea tempt you at all?
At Étretat?
How do you know?
I don't know. It was a guess. Go on.
I've had a telephone call from the minister's office. Do you know Charles Besson?
Jouvacrines?
Not exactly. He's the founder's son, though. He lives at Fécamp and was elected deputy for the Seine-Inférieure 2 years ago.
And his mother lives at Étretat?
Stepmother. She was Ferdinand Besson's second wife. Charles Besson's asked for you to take up the case.
His stepmother's maid was poisoned on Sunday night.
You read the Normandy papers?
No, the old lady's in my office.
And she wants you on the case, too?
Yes, she obviously doesn't know that Charles has asked for me.
What have you decided?
Well, that's up to you, Chief.
I was going to ask you to go there straight away. I'm sure you could do with a bit of sea air.
So there I was, in a neat little local train, chugging my way to Étretat.
Yes. Do you know, I still feel that fascination, that delicious slight shock at the first sight of the sea from the train.
Yes, I remember that feeling well, but for me it's gone, I'm afraid. A loss. I must be farther from my childhood than you are, Georges. The station master at Étretat gave me a message from Inspector Castaigne. He was at Rosie's funeral and would meet me later. He turned up at midday. And how did the funeral go?
Oh, rather badly.
In what way?
Valentine brought a huge wreath that put the others to shame. Well, she might have been chief mourner. And the girl's family didn't like it.
Was her daughter at the funeral?
No. She went back to Paris on Monday. Charles Besson wasn't there either. Nor Theo.
Theo?
The second stepson. He's been staying here a couple of weeks.
With his stepmother?
No. No, they've been on bad terms for years. He was only at the birthday dinner because Charles met him in a bar and dragged him along. Theo bends the elbow a bit.
So the whole family were at the dinner on Sunday. How long did they stay afterwards?
Charles Besson and his family left at 9. Theo went a few minutes later. He's a bachelor, by the way. And then there were just the 3 women in the house, Valentine, Arlette, and the maid. Except that...
Yes?
Arlette had a man in her room.
Huh? Did she tell you that?
No, I found out. I searched the house on Monday, you see, and...
Wait a minute. I'm getting hungry. You can tell me about it over lunch. Do you think I'll be able to have mussels?
Possibly. I wouldn't bank on it, though.
Oh, a place like this, there should be mussels. Let's go back and eat. No mussels.
I told you not to bank on it.
Well, now, Arlette, what's she like?
She's 38 and looks 25. Small and slim, very pretty. Enormous eyes, like Valentine's. She's married to a dentist.
And he presumably didn't come down with her?
No, he didn't. But I found a man's handkerchief in her room. She was very upset.
What did she do?
Snatched it from me and said it was her husband's. But the initial on it was H, and her husband's name is Julien Soudre. I didn't find that out till afterwards.
Any idea who the man was?
Yes. Arlette said she'd come down by train, but she was lying. She was seen arriving in a pale green sports car with a man. He was easy enough to trace. Hervé Perrault. He stayed at this hotel. The night porter says he didn't go to bed till 2:30. He'd gone for a walk.
It was 2:00 when Rose started to grow.
Yes. That must have frightened him off pretty quickly.
Were there many people at the funeral?
The whole of Ypres was there.
The men will all be drunk by this evening.
What?
Try this white wine. Not bad.
A little Calvados, Inspector? It's just over 30 years old.
Oh, thank you.
I shall have a drop as well to keep you company, provided you won't be shocked. Do please smoke your pipe. I love it.
Ah, sure.
My late husband filled this place with cigar smoke. You know, I never imagined that one day the famous Inspector Maigret would be sitting in that chair.
By the way, didn't you tell me you'd kept some newspaper articles about me?
That's right. I cut them out.
Oh, do you have them here?
I think I could find them. They're probably in here. Oh, yeah. I must have put them in my bedroom. I'll go up.
No, please don't bother, madame.
Isn't that terrible? Now you think I said all that in Paris to flatter you and persuade you to come here. I really did keep them, Inspector. But Rose wasn't a very tidy person and things got lost. Now, I expect you have heaps of questions to ask me. But first, your health, Monsieur Maigret.
And yours, madame. Does your daughter often come to see you?
Once a year on my birthday. The rest of the time I hear nothing of her. You haven't seen Arlette, have you?
Not yet.
She looks as though butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Poor Julien.
Does your daughter love her husband?
I'm not sure she's capable of loving anybody.
Why do you say that?
When my first husband died, I worked in a pastry shop here. Arlette, a child of 7, said to me, "Do you think I like having a mother who sells cakes to my friends?" That's what she was like then. She hasn't changed.
Tell me about your first husband.
And he was very gentle and very sweet. But he died of tuberculosis soon after we were married. I was left with Arlette.
And then you got the job in the shop?
Yes. The Surrey sisters owned it. One's dead now. The other's still alive, but she's 92. She lives almost next door. One day Ferdinand Besson came into the shop. We were married a few months later.
How old were you then?
I was 33 and he was 55. Do you know his history?
Oh, I know he owned Jouvin products.
Yes. He was a small local chemist. Then he patented Jouvin cream and made a fortune overnight. His poor wife died soon after. And then he married me. I was part of his new lifestyle.
What do you mean?
He wasn't used to money, you see. He hardly knew what to do with it. He needed a pretty wife to dress up and show off. But Parisian women terrified him. He felt at home with me because I was only a shop girl. Do you understand?
Yes, madame, I think I do.
He covered me with jewels. He sent me to the big dress houses. He even built a yacht.
Was he happy?
Happy? Oh, Inspector, that I don't know. I think he was always afraid people were laughing at him. You see, he had his money too late.
Now, what about Arlette? Did she enjoy it all?
I can't answer that. At 20, she suddenly married this boy we didn't even know. I've never understood her.
Did you get on well with your stepson?
Charles has always treated me as if I were his mother. Theo didn't like me.
Were you surprised to find him here at Étretat?
Yes, I didn't even know he was staying here until Charles brought him to dinner. We hadn't spoken for years. Well, I was telling you about the money. It all went. Ferdinand overreached himself. We had to sell the yacht, and then the chateau, and then all my jewels. I was left with imitations. His last years were sad. He died alone in a hotel in Paris. He'd gone there in the hope of a business deal.
And then you settled here?
Yes. We'd had the house for years, as a sort of pied-à-terre. I felt at home in Étretat, even though nearly everyone I knew in my youth had gone.
Well, Mademoiselle Surrey is still here, you said?
She's about the only one. Some more Calvados?
Thank you. Tell me, madame, have you never suspected that your daughter had a lover?
Good heavens, no. But it's very possible, I suppose.
A man was in her room with her on Sunday night.
What?
He must have left hurriedly through the window when Rose started groaning.
Oh, dear. What bad luck. So that was why she stayed the night. I thought it couldn't have been concerned for me.
She sat there in her charming little doll's house looking like a piece of porcelain. I remember I felt contented and rather sleepy. I had a job to stay awake.
After all that Calvados, I'm not surprised.
That's another seaside hazard. I feel as if I'm on holiday. Indolent, unfocused. It's a job to concentrate.
How long did you stay with Valentine?
Oh, an hour or two. And when I got back, the light was fading. It was aperitif time. I went into the casino bar. Actually, I spent quite a time there. The barman turned out to be an old acquaintance of mine, Johnny from the Rue Danou. Well, eventually I went back to my hotel for dinner. I had a surprise.
Good evening, Inspector. I'm Arlette Soudre.
Oh, good evening, madame.
I would like to speak to you in private.
Well, that's a little difficult as we're not at the Quai des Orfèvres. I don't quite see where, No, perhaps the easiest way would be for you to have something to eat with me. I could ask for a quiet table.
Yes, that seems to be the best idea.
So you've come back from Paris?
Yes. I got back late this afternoon.
Why?
Surely you can guess.
Was your mother expecting you?
No, I couldn't let her know. She isn't on the telephone. I've just been up there. Only stayed long enough to leave my case. And quarrel, as usual. What do you intend to do?
I don't understand your question.
Police inquiries stir up mud. I'm married and very fond of my husband. So, what do you intend to do?
Your husband doesn't know about your extramarital activities?
You choose your words carefully, don't you?
Well, if you prefer, I'll be more direct. Your husband doesn't know you have a lover?
No, that's why I came back.
Why did you leave?
I didn't know what my husband would do when he heard the news. I wanted to stop him coming down here.
I see. And as soon as you got to Paris, you began to worry.
Yes. I telephoned Charles, and he said you were taking over the case.
And that reassured you?
No. Will my husband find out?
It's unlikely.
Do you think I tried to poison my mother?
Why do you ask me that?
Because I was the only person in the house when it happened. And I don't love her.
Have you disliked her for a long time?
Ever since I found she'd never loved me.
How do your stepbrothers feel about her?
They don't like her much because she helped my stepfather to run through his fortune.
How did you get on with your stepfather?
I was packed off to finishing school in Switzerland straight after the wedding. Mother didn't want me around. I think she was jealous.
Of what?
My stepfather spoilt me. When I came back to Paris at 17, he hung round me all the time.
What do you mean?
He came into my room one evening when I was dressing for the theatre. He lost his head and I slapped him.
What did he do?
Burst into tears and begged me not to tell my mother. He looked ridiculous.
Did it happen again?
No, never.
Were you in love with anyone then?
Yes, Theo.
Was he in love with you?
No, he ignored me. I hid in his room one night, and this little dancer came in. I let her know I was there. She went off, furious, and I was left with Theo.
And then?
He didn't want to. I almost forced him.
And afterwards?
There was no afterwards.
Why?
I suppose he felt embarrassed.
And you?
I was disgusted with men.
But then you got married?
Not immediately. For more than a year, I slept with every man who came along.
From disgust?
Yes. You don't understand, of course.
Then?
I got sick of it. I tried to end it by getting married and living like everybody else.
Did you end it?
No.
You carried on even after your marriage?
Yes.
From the first year?
From the first month.
Why?
Because I can't help it.
You love your husband?
Yes. Have you any other questions to ask me?
When I've digested what you've told me, I will.
Excuse me, Inspector. You're wanted on the telephone.
Who by?
Monsieur Charles Besson.
Excuse me. Will you wait for me?
Yes.
Yes?
Chief Inspector Maigret?
Speaking.
I'm terribly sorry. I tear you away from Paris, and I'm not even there to welcome you. I assure you I did intend to be at the station, but I had to leave for Dieppe last night. My wife's mother has died.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
She had no sons. I was the only man in the house, so I had to stay. I'm back at Fécamp now. I could drive straight over if you like.
Well, that's not necessary, unless you have anything new to tell me.
No, I don't really know anything about Sunday night. You won't have found out already. Would it suit you then if I came round at 9 tomorrow morning?
Oh, certainly. I'll see you then. He had to go to Dieppe.
Has she died at last?
Yes.
Charles must be delighted.
Why didn't he like her?
He'll inherit a lot of money.
You don't seem in a hurry to get back to your mother's house.
I'm not. But please tell me if I'm in the way.
No, that's all right. Would you like to go somewhere else?
Where?
A bar.
No, we might meet Theo.
Are you still in love with him?
No. Come on, let's go for a walk. It's a fine night.
Did anyone else in the family ever know that your stepfather had approached you?
Mother knew. I'm sure of it.
Well, who would have told her?
Nobody. She listened at doors.
I want to ask another very personal question.
I can predict everything you'll ask me.
When did you learn you couldn't have children?
You've forgotten what I told you.
No.
I never took any precautions. I didn't allow the men to use any.
Why?
Out of fastidiousness, perhaps.
Oh, how did you find out for certain?
A young doctor told me.
Was he your lover?
Yes.
During those amorous experiences, did you feel any...
Enjoyment? Is that what you were going to say?
Well, I was going to use the word satisfaction.
Never.
Suppose your mother suddenly told you she knew about that side of your life.
I'd tell her to mind her own business.
And suppose she threatened to tell your husband.
Is that what you've been leading up to?
I got there without intending to.
I wouldn't want Julien to know for anything in the world.
But if your mother...
If she threatened to make me look dirty in his eyes, I'd do anything to stop her.
Including murder?
Yes. The question hasn't arisen yet.
Why do you say yet?
Because she knows now. She spoke to me about Hervé this afternoon.
What did you say?
You would be surprised. She can be very foul-mouthed. I shut her up.
How?
I hit her.
You really intend to sleep there?
I had no choice. Oh, don't be afraid. There won't be any trouble.
Fog's coming up. We'd better get back.
We turn right to get down again. Have you any more questions?
Not at the moment.
And?
And?
Don't you want to make the most of me?
What?
All I've been saying was meant for you, you know.
Be quiet.
You are tempted, aren't you?
I'm going back.
I'm sorry. I behaved like an idiot.
You did. What time is your train tomorrow?
8 in the morning. Unless you keep me here.
You can take it.
The left path goes down to my mother's house. The right takes you back to the town. Will you come in and have a drink?
No.
Are you still angry with me?
I don't know. Go and get some sleep.
Good night, Monsieur Maigret.
Good night.
And were you?
Was I what?
Tempted. You said she was beautiful.
Well, she was. But her eyes were dead. Big, blue, dead eyes. Not at all like her mother's, really. And, Georges, those revelations, she seemed to be too eager to analyze herself, to dirty herself. No, I wasn't tempted.
So what were your feelings when you walked back down the cliff path?
Confused. I was wondering whether I should have given her permission to leave next morning. And I wanted a drink.
Yeah. In those circumstances, I would have too. So you went to the casino bar and saw Johnny?
I did. What's more, I saw Théo Besson, too.
Well, Chief Inspector, what's it to be?
A beer, please, Johnny. I'm thirsty.
Righto. There we are.
Busy tonight, aren't you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Can't complain. There we are, Inspector.
Thank you. Good help.
You know who that is over there?
What, the tall man in English tweeds? No.
Théo Besson.
Oh. Is he often in here?
Yeah, but not here particularly. He does the rounds of all the bars in the place. He drinks like a fish.
Who's that with him?
Henri Trochu, the dead girl's brother.
Did they come in together?
Yeah. Théo was friendly with Rose, you know.
Was he? You don't mean
No, I don't think so. I never saw him lay hands on her, but they chatted and laughed together, and he tried to get her tight. Oh, that was difficult. 2 glasses did it.
When did you last see them together?
Oh, about a week ago.
And the first time?
A couple of weeks before that. Oh, they're going. Good night, monsieur.
I slept badly and had nightmares. Those last beers had been a mistake. I woke to high seas and the sound of the fog siren. Arlette would be away to Paris by now. But at 9 I had to meet Charles Besson. I hoped he wouldn't shout.
I do hope I haven't kept you waiting, Chief Inspector.
No, that's all right. Look, do you mind if we talk here?
Of course not.
They haven't done my room yet.
This suits me perfectly.
Can I ask you something?
Anything.
Are you fond of your stepmother?
Oh, yes, very. She's always been good to me.
What about your brother, Théo?
There was a coldness there, certainly.
Did he come with you willingly to Valentine's dinner?
I made him see how silly it was to stay on bad terms with her.
How did he behave?
Like a gentleman.
The whole family was at the dinner, I gather. Was there anything which gave you a hint of tragedy?
Nothing at all. Look, Inspector, I think you're on the wrong track. It was to avoid this sort of misunderstanding that I asked them to send you down. We're a perfectly ordinary, happy family. I'm sure there's some simple explanation.
Rose is dead.
Someone must have come in. A tramp, perhaps.
Someone who waited till the house was crowded and then got in and slipped poison into a glass.
Yes, it's all very confused, certainly, but... tell me, Inspector, in confidence, what do you suspect?
I have no definite suspicions, Monsieur Besson. Incidentally, I came here because you asked, of course, but also because your stepmother came up and saw me.
What? She came up to Paris and asked for you?
Yes.
That's odd. I wouldn't have thought she'd have heard of you.
Well, she told me she followed my cases in the paper.
Huh?
Oh, what's the matter?
Oh, nothing. It's just that I've never seen her read a paper. I thought she had no interest at all in what was going on outside Etretat.
You see, you can always find out something new. Look, are you thirsty?
I wouldn't mind a drink.
Good.
Have you met Théo yet?
No.
He's almost certainly in the casino bar. If he is, I'll introduce you. Théo, I hoped we'd find you here. Do you know Chief Inspector Maigret?
How do you do, Inspector?
How do you do?
Have you seen Valentine since Sunday?
No.
Are you staying here long?
I don't know.
He's a funny chap, Inspector. We never know what he's doing from one day to the next. Off to London, Brussels, Chamonix. That's you, isn't it, Théo?
Monsieur Théo, when did you last have a meeting with Rose?
With Rose?
Do you want the exact date?
If possible.
I haven't got that kind of memory.
Did you meet her often?
Well, 2 or 3 times. When I first met her, I didn't know she was my mother's maid.
Where was this?
At the Vilcot Fair.
Oh, you are a dark horse. I didn't know you ran after housemaids.
We were both watching the sack race. We got bored with the fair. I offered her a lift home.
Is that all?
Is this an interrogation?
No, but you're the first person I met who knew anything about the girl. What did you think of her?
Little peasant girl who'd read too much and didn't understand what she was reading.
Was there anything between you?
Absolutely nothing. She thought marriage was a very dirty thing. It's her own expression.
In fact, you were amusing yourself by making a character study.
Did you know her brother before her death?
Only by name. She didn't like her family.
Well, then how did you meet Henri?
He stopped me on the street. He thought, like you, that I'd seduced his sister. I convinced him that I hadn't, and he calmed down.
Did he bear a grudge against you?
No. Against Valentine.
Why?
That's his business.
Did Rose show any sign of wanting to kill herself?
No, never. She was very scared of dying. She was a bit of a hypochondriac. Took a whole army of patent medicines.
Was she fond of Valentine?
No. The two women, living together, morning till night. How could they be fond of each other? Is that all?
Yes, for the moment. Thank you, monsieur.
Oh, Inspector, it's not true. Tell me it's not true.
Why, what's so funny?
You'd have to know Theo. He's a terrible, terrible snob. Theo and Rose. Good heavens. But tell me, where did they go?
Well, they had a drink together occasionally.
I hope he didn't meet her here, climbing in through the window like my daughter's lover.
Why, he says not.
No, that would have been too much. Inspector, as you're here, you must have a drink. A little Calvados?
No, thank you, madame. I have to meet Inspector Castin, and your fresh air makes me sleepy enough as it is.
Where are you going now?
I'm going to pay a visit to Yport, to the girl's family.
Shall I drive you?
No, I want you to find Theo Besson.
That won't be difficult. I only have to go round the bars. And then?
Well, nothing. Just watch him. Don't let him out of your sight.
Right.
Now, where can I get a taxi?
I suppose you're the boss of the one who came before.
I'm Chief Inspector Maigret.
What do you want this time?
You've collected your daughter's things?
Yes, it was my right.
Of course. I just want to see them.
You shouldn't be bothering us. My daughter's dead, and it's those others you should be questioning, the ones you're so careful to leave in peace.
That's right, Mother. Madame, your daughter is dead. Poisoned. There may be something among her possessions that'll help us to find out who did it. Do you want her murderer caught?
Well, Jean, we'd better show him the ring.
Yes, I've got it here in my pocket.
Thank you. Did your daughter have any other pieces of jewelry?
No.
Found it at the bottom of a shoe in a little ball of newspaper.
It worried me. I took it to a jeweller in Fécamp, and he said...
Yeah?
He said it was an emerald.
Henri, was that the reason you were with Theo?
Yes, I went to ask him if he'd given Rose the ring. He swore he hadn't.
Can you let me have it for a day or two?
Well, it's not ours. If you take it away, you must give us a receipt.
Oh, of course. And then I'll leave you in peace.
Can you give me a lift to Étretat? There are some things I've got to do.
Yes.
You can drop me at the casino bar.
Good evening, Castin.
Hello. How did you get on with the Trochu family?
Oh, some surprises. I've just dropped the son at the casino bar. On duty outside Theo's hotel, I see.
Yes. He hasn't spoken to a soul all evening. He went up to his room a few minutes ago. That's his light on up there.
Well, perhaps he's going to bed.
Shall I keep on watching?
Yes.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to say good night to Valentine. There she is, in the living room. Let her call out. She may be scared if she hears an intruder. What the hell? The light's gone out.
Who's there?
Oh, it's me, Maigret.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll put the light on again straight away. There. I let you in.
Aye.
You see? I'm not as brave as I make out. And I barricade myself in. Come in.
Thank you.
What would you like to drink?
Oh, nothing, thank you, madame. Ever since I came here, I seem to have been drinking from morning till night. Has anybody paid you a visit since I left?
No one. I paid a visit myself to old Mademoiselle Fury, my nearest neighbour. I like living alone, but sometimes I'm a bit nervous. When I heard your step, I've often wondered what I'd do about a night prowler. I decided I'd switch off my light and then switch on the garden light outside so that I could see without being seen.
Oh, it's an excellent idea.
Were you worried about me?
Oh, I just wanted to be sure everything was all right.
What? Hope you're not going to condemn some poor inspector to spend the night on the road in order to protect me. Or if you let me know, I'll put a camphor bed in the kitchen.
Well, I'll be getting back to my hotel.
Oh, one glass before you go, Inspector, please.
All right, on condition you have one with me.
He's still there. His light's still on.
Yeah.
You didn't meet Rose's brother again, did you, Chief? He went past an hour ago, zigzagging all over the place.
Which way was he heading?
He went down the street and turned right. Are we staying here?
Yes.
You think Teo's going to come out?
I don't know. You sure he didn't speak to anyone this evening?
Quite sure. What's the time?
Midnight.
Oh, perhaps he's reading in bed. Oh, what an idiot.
What?
Oh, I forgot to tell you, nobody spoke to him, but in the bar at the post he was called to the telephone.
What? When was this?
Just after 8.
Well, come on, I'm going to check he's in his room. You wait in the hall. He's gone, so's his car.
Chief, I'm so terribly
We'd
sorry.
better get your car.
Monsieur Maigret, somebody's just telephoned.
Who?
Oh, I don't know, a man. You're asked to go up to the old lady's place at once. You said you'd understand.
Monsieur Besson, what's happened?
He's in here, Inspector.
Hurt?
Dead.
Henri Trochu. Oh, devil. What happened, Doctor?
He's been shot. The bullet lodged in the aorta.
It's horrible, Inspector. It all happened so soon after you left.
What happened?
I forgot to turn on the second switch, the garden light. I was upstairs in bed, you see, and I heard a noise.
Where was the revolver?
By my bed in a cupboard. I came downstairs.
Without switching on the light?
Yes. Someone was trying to open the door. I called. Who was there? Nobody answered.
Did you shoot straight away?
I don't think so. I called again several times. Then I fired. I killed that poor boy.
When did you find who it was?
When I opened the door. I went over to Mademoiselle Fury's and telephoned the doctor and asked him to tell you.
And Teo?
I found him here when I came back with the doctor.
She won't go to bed and let me give her an injection. She'll collapse if she isn't careful. Won't you persuade her?
I don't think that it's necessary.
Oh, well, in that case... I've left a couple of tablets in your room, madame, in case you change your mind. I shall be at your service if you need me, Inspector.
Thank you. Madame, and you, Monsieur Besson, we'd better go into the sitting room. Castin, have you got your notebook?
Yes, Chief.
Sit at the table, take notes.
Inspector, a little Calvados.
No. Sit down. Monsieur Besson, where were you when he was killed?
By the gate.
Are you feeling proud of yourself? You knew she had a revolver?
Yes. Will you please inform me
I'm
if
asking the questions.
And if I refuse to answer?
I may decide to hit you, the thing I've been wanting to do for the last half hour. How long have you known?
Known what?
That your stepmother's jewellery was never sold. That they're the originals and not, as she said, the imitations.
I always suspected it.
What was their value?
Several million francs.
Why didn't you tell your brother your suspicion?
Because I was not certain.
Are you sure it wasn't because you hoped to come to some arrangement with Valentine?
I refuse to answer.
You came to Étretat to find out. You made Rose's acquaintance to find out.
Rose was ferreting about before she met me.
How did she know about the jewels?
She got a gimlet. She bored a little hole in the wall separating her room from my stepmother's. She saw Valentine put the jewels away. She took the ring while Valentine was having a bath.
Madame Besson?
It's all lies.
We can take the jewellery and find out.
Well, it was my right. My husband agreed with me.
When did you find the ring was missing?
I won't answer.
It was probably last week. You knew the thief must be Rose, so you decided to kill her before she had time to betray you. You knew she was a hypochondriac with a passion for patent medicines. She'd probably finished off your sleeping draught before, so it was easy. Well, how could anyone suspect you when you seemed to be the intended victim? You weren't even alarmed until you heard that Charles Besson had asked the minister to send me.
You're very modest, Monsieur Maigret.
So you came to see me yourself.
You've no proof?
I told you about Theo and Rose quite deliberately. I knew you'd react. Try to see Theo before I questioned him. Perhaps shut him up for good. So you went to Mademoiselle Seret and telephoned all the bars till you found Theo. You asked him to come up here at midnight. But you had no intention of talking to him. You were going to kill for a second time. Isn't that what happened, Monsieur Besson?
I cannot reply to that question. A gentleman
Does a gentleman encourage a servant to commit a theft? Does a gentleman send someone else to be murdered in his place? You thought about it and began to suspect a trap. Then poor Henri, half-drunk, staggered into the bar, so you sent him on ahead. Into Valentine's trap.
What trap?
No, you'd played the prelude to me earlier in the evening. The trick about the switch, which gave you an excuse for having fired in a panic before you turned on the outside light. Only you killed the wrong man.
Well, are you going to handcuff me?
No. You'd love that. It'll make you look like a victim. Castin, take her away. After all, it was a woman's crime. Poison.
More. It was the crime of an old woman living alone. It had been nursed for a long time, thought of lovingly for hours and hours.
Yes. Well, they took her away. Next day I left for Paris. There was no fog and the wind had dropped. It was a beautiful day. The sea was calm and there were just a few clouds in a sky that was brilliantly blue. The same blue as Valentine's eyes.
In Maigret and the Old Lady by Georges Simenon, translated by Robert Brain, and adapted for radio by Betty Davis, Maigret was played by Maurice Denham, Simenon by Michael Goff, and Valentine Besson by Amy Delamain. Arlette Sudre, Diana Olsen, Charles Besson, Douglas Blackwell, Theo Besson, Aubrey Woods. Inspector Castin, Michael Harbour, Trochu, Bruce Beebe, Madame Trochu, Shirley Dixon, Henri Trochu, Peter Craze, Police Chief William Edel, Johnny, Walter Hall. Other parts were played by William Edel, Walter Hall, Bruce Beebe, and Peter Craze. And the play was produced and directed by Betty Davis.
Simenon's Maigret, a series of plays based on the novels of Georges Simenon.
Oh, that stupid girl.
Well, which girl?
The maid. I'll kill her.
Why?
She burned them.
What?
My notes on the Parandon case, the ones I took down last week when you told me about it.
How on earth did that happen?
As you know, I am a very exact man. My desk is always neat and tidy, my filing system impeccable. On this occasion, I had stapled the notes together and placed them carefully on the right of my desk, adjacent to the phone. I was disturbed by a knock on my study door. I rose.
Irritably?
Rather hastily, and it appears that my jacket brushed the notes from my desk.
Onto the floor?
No, into my waste paper basket.
Shush. So now you want me to tell you about the Parandon case all over again. All right. I'll refresh your memory.
Maurice Denham as Jules Maigret and Michael Goff as Georges Simenon in Maigret Hesitates. Translated by Lynn Moyer and adapted for radio by Edward Bruce.
Well, first I got this anonymous letter. It was printed in block capitals on a thick vellum paper. Someone appeared to have cut off an engraved letterhead. Dear Chief Inspector Maigret, this letter will astonish you. Do not throw it in the wastepaper basket too quickly. It is not a joke or the work of a maniac. A murder will be committed shortly, certainly within a few days. Perhaps by someone known to me, perhaps by me myself. It is, I believe, inevitable, but when it happens, I would like you to know. If you take me seriously, please put the following advertisement in the personal column of Le Figaro or Le Monde. K.R., I am waiting for your second letter. I do not know for certain if I shall write it. I'm very worried. Certain decisions are hard to make. Yours faithfully, no signature.
I don't think it's the work of a crank.
Why not, Luca?
And a logical reason. There's a genuine sense of distress about it. And the paper, let me see the watermark. Morvan Vellum. Well, most letters like this are written on cheap paper, often misspelled deliberately, not this one. The words seem to have been carefully chosen.
Yes, I think you're right, Luca. Have the advertisement put in both papers. And Lapointe.
Chief?
Try and find out the manufacturer of this paper. It might lead us somewhere.
It was too easy, Chief. Manufacturer Géron & Son. Distribution through 2 stationers only. It's a very expensive paper. I tried the station on the Avenue de l'Opéra and struck oil the first time. They haven't ordered fresh supplies for nearly 5 years, as they only had 3 customers. One died, one was attached to an embassy but was recalled, and the other...
Well?
Monsieur Émile Parandon, a lawyer in the Avenue Marigny. He's been using this paper for more than 15 years and won't have any other. His last order was made in October.
Headed paper?
Yes. So you see, Chief, the anonymous letter could only have come from Monsieur Parandon's residence.
Yeah, I just reached that conclusion myself, Lapointe. I think I should call on Monsieur Parandon. So I phoned for an appointment.
But first you checked with Maître Bouvier, who told you that Parandon specialized in maritime law and that he was practically unbeatable in this field. I was surprised when you told me that he turned out to be an insignificant little man, almost gnome-like.
Oh, why surprised?
An eminent lawyer, consulted by big business interests from all over the world, thousands at stake. I'd imagined a forceful, dominating man.
Well, the flat in the Avenue Marigny was magnificent. Divided into business offices, private and servants' quarters. There was even a self-contained flatlet for René Tortu, Parandon's personal assistant. I was shown in by Ferdinand, the butler, along a corridor with windows overlooking the avenue, through a little office occupied by his secretary, and finally into the most palatial library I've ever seen in a private residence. Parandon was waiting for me. He bounded out of his chair like a jack-in-the-box to greet me.
Chief Inspector, I can't tell you how delighted I am to meet you. I've admired your work tremendously for years, and when you rang this afternoon, so unexpectedly... Would you care to sit down? What can I offer you? The cognac isn't particularly good, but I have a 40-year-old Armagnac.
Just a little, please.
My wife only lets me have a drop on special occasions. She says I have a weak liver. According to her, I'm weak all over.
Thank you. Your good health.
Santé. May I ask you a personal question? How old were you before you began to understand men? I mean to understand the men we call criminals.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure that I do understand them.
Of course you do. Your success is the success of a man of wisdom, of depth.
I have something
That's why I'm so happy to meet you. I've read so much about your work. My cases are as dry as dust. No human contact to speak of, facts and figures, statements of law, but I have a hobby, one I'm sure you'd be interested in. Article 64 of the Penal Code, which you must know better than I do. There is no crime or misdemeanor if the accused was in a state of dementia at the time of the act, or if he was driven to it by an irresistible impulse. What do you think of it?
Well, I'm glad I'm not a judge.
That's what I like to hear. That's the kind of thing I want to know. Sitting in your office in front of a guilty man, or a man presumed to be guilty, are you capable of determining how far he is responsible?
Oh, rarely. The psychiatrists
Would you
are
believe
to
me
it.
when I tell you that there are thousands of us trying to change this relic of the past? It's so easy for the judges to say responsible about an accused man and pass on to the next case. The objection from the authorities is that if it were changed, the doctors and not the judges would have the task of judging. Why not? Why not the doctors? Judges haven't the time or experience for this kind of delicate decision. I could talk to you about it for hours. It's more than a hobby with me. It's almost a mania. Oh, you must forgive me. I've been so thrilled at this chance to talk to you. I've been discourteous enough not to ask you why you wanted to see me.
No, not at all. Something I wanted to show you. I received this letter this morning. I wouldn't say for certain it came from this house, but it seems likely. Do you use this kind of paper?
Good heavens. It does look like the paper I use. Anonymous, sir. A murder will known to me, perhaps by me myself, were inevitable. Strange. A joke?
I don't know.
Come in, my dear. Let me introduce you to Chief Inspector Maigret.
How do you do, monsieur?
How do you do?
I hope you haven't come to arrest my husband. With his bad health...
No, madame.
I expect it's about one of our domestics.
No, that'd be a matter for the local police.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, I leave you gentlemen to your own affairs. I only came to tell you, Emile, that I won't be back before 8. You can always join me at Hortensis. Goodbye, Monsieur Maigret. You're an extremely interesting man.
Did you get it? She's put out. She banged the door. An extremely interesting man. She's furious because you didn't tell her why you're here, and more furious because you didn't comment on her dress or how young she looks. She'd have loved you to have taken her for my daughter.
Oh, have you a daughter?
No, but I have a son, Jacques, nearly 16. But I'm wasting your time. We should get back to the writing paper now. Here's a sheet of mine. I'm almost certain it is the same. Your experts will be able to tell you.
Can you think of any reason why someone here should have written this letter?
It must be a joke.
How many people live in this flat?
Well, there's my wife and I, of course. My son, Lise, the maid, René Tortue, Ferdinand, our butler. Yes, that's all.
That was the household, although, of course, there was his secretary, Mademoiselle Vargue, and his housekeeper. But both of them lived out. I left the flat after talking to Parendon. There seemed little more I could do. But the next morning, the first thing I did was to go through my mail. Sure enough, there was the second letter. Same envelope, same writing, same paper with the heading cut off. Listen to this, lad. You made a mistake, Monsieur Maigret, in coming before you received my second letter. That means things being speeded up. From now on, the crime may be committed any time, and that'll be partly your fault. I thought you were more patient, more reflective. Perhaps you're more vain than I thought. I cannot help any more. My advice is to continue your investigation in your own way. In spite of everything, I have great admiration for you. What do you make of that?
Somebody wanted you to go to that house, and then again, they didn't.
Great admiration for you?
Look, must you make that sound like an insult, Lapointe?
Oh, no, I mean, Parendon. Couldn't he have written it? Admired you tremendously. That's what he said to you yesterday, wasn't it?
Yes. I think I'd better get back to the Avenue Marigny. When I arrived, I asked first to be taken to the secretary's office. I'd met Mademoiselle Vargue briefly the previous afternoon. She was about 24, not beautiful in the usual sense, but a pleasant face and a friendly manner. I showed her the letters. Monsieur Parendon hasn't seen the second letter yet. What do you think of it?
It's a joke, surely, and a rather spiteful one. A clever way to get you to come here and harass us with questions. One of the servants, perhaps?
What about the boy? Is he a practical joker?
No. Why should you think of him?
Well, it's a feeling more than a fact, but the structure of the sentences, the choice of words, don't you feel they're a little naive?
Why, yes, perhaps. But Jacques is a highly intelligent boy, and his grammar is excellent. I don't think he could have written either of these letters.
You like him?
Very much.
And he, you?
He's nearly 16. I'd say he has a schoolboy crush on me. He comes into my office as often as he can. Wants to borrow rubber, a piece of string, some paper. He likes to chat with me.
How does he get on with his father?
Oh, very well.
With the rest of the household?
It's difficult for me, Chief Inspector. I don't live in the house. I know he likes René.
René talked to you?
Yes. René got me this job.
Oh. So,
You don't have to ask, Chief Inspector. I shall tell you. We were having an affair at the time, but it didn't work out. Although I'm very fond of him. He's what you might call a gentle failure. He studied law and failed his finals. He'd have made a poor lawyer, but I think he might become a good dramatist.
Oh, he writes plays?
He's been scribbling for years, practicing. I read his last one. Oh, well, I'm no critic, but I thought it was excellent. Then he burned it, said it was no good, because he'd tried to write about things that, well, that he hadn't experienced himself. Oh, poor René. He does his job well, though.
Now, this time I will ask, since we're talking about such things. Do you go to bed with Monsieur Parendon?
Oh, dear. I'm laughing not because we don't make love, but, well, it's more or less on the run, so to speak. Well, the word bed isn't exactly appropriate. It's a question of when and where it's possible. Sometimes the drawing room, sometimes his study. Mostly when we know Madame Parendon is out.
Does René talk to know about it?
You must guess.
Madame Parendon? Has she ever surprised you with her husband?
I'm not sure. We're careful, but, well, she's inclined to be everywhere when she's at home. One day she came into the study at a rather delicate moment. Fortunately, we had time to look normal. At least, I think we did.
Don't you like her?
I wouldn't have her for a friend.
How do you feel about Monsieur Parendon apart from...
Our sexual relationship isn't important, Chief Inspector, at least to me. Does that answer your question?
What's this?
A rather old-fashioned razor knife. We haven't got a guillotine for paper trimming. This is enough for us.
Enough to cut off a letter heading?
Well, yes.
Do you think any of the staff could have composed letters like these?
Well, certainly not Lise, the maid, or Madame Vauquin, the cook. They're almost illiterate. The butler, Ferdinand, well, yes, he could have, but I doubt it.
So the people who might have written them are...
René, of course. Jacques could have, but Madame or Monsieur Parendon, and, of course,
yourself?
Myself.
Well, thank you. You've been most helpful. One further question. Do you still think the letters are a joke?
I'm inclined not to think so anymore.
Then who do you think is the person being threatened? Why don't you answer?
Because you know perfectly well what I would say. Emile. Emile, of course.
You're very fond of him, aren't you?
Yes.
You know what I think? I think you should join me for lunch. I'm glad I took her with me.
Yes. You've forgotten something, Jules. You saw Parendon again for a moment before you left the house, and he told you he had a Browning automatic which he kept just in case.
Did I? In case of what?
He said burglars. And you showed him the second letter.
Yes, you're quite right.
Well, go on, Jules.
Well, after a very pleasant lunch, I telephoned the Quai des Orfèvres. Lucas, anything new?
I've been trying to contact you, yes. A phone call from Madame Parendon. She almost demanded that you go and see her. She'll wait in until 4 o'clock.
Nice of her.
She sounded not exactly nervous, but strung up. But more odd was a phone call about 10 minutes ago. A strange voice. Could have been a man or a woman, or even a child. Whoever it was simply said, "Tell Chief Inspector Maigret to hurry," and hung up.
Well, thanks. I'll go and see her now.
I'm a little ashamed of having telephoned you, Chief Inspector.
Your husband's told you about the letters?
Of course. That's why I wanted to speak to you. I didn't write them. I thought you should know that. And I'm somewhat put out that you went to see the little Varg girl before you came to see me. But more importantly, I'm a very direct woman, and I'll come straight to the point. I'm worried about my husband. What do you think of him?
Oh, I found him very pleasant. A sensitive, intelligent man.
I suggest over-sensitive. Sometimes he frightens me, so introspective, so withdrawn. It's his appearance, I suppose. He's almost deformed, isn't he? He was a premature baby, and that would account for it. When I married him, there was a certain amount of pity in my love for him, and lately I've been wondering, how can I put it delicately? Wondering if he's quite normal. What do you think?
Normal? In what sense?
You know perfectly well. You seem to be trying not to understand.
To understand what?
Why, I'm so worried. Those letters reflect my own fears exactly. I've been worried for weeks, months, well, years, in fact. As time's gone on, he's shut himself away more and more, and I've tried very hard to make him happy. But now I'm afraid. Not so much for me, but for him. I don't know what he might do.
Are you suggesting that he might take his own life?
Who knows? He might do anything. He has an irritating sense of humour, not to say macabre. He might have written those letters himself for some obscure reason.
Do you consider your husband a medical case?
It's difficult for me to say it, but yes.
A mental case?
Perhaps.
I'm beginning to understand. You asked me to come here so that you could suggest to me that I have your husband examined by a psychiatrist.
In that case, you've either deliberately misunderstood me or I've expressed myself badly. I said nothing at all about a psychiatrist.
But the thought showed clearly in everything you said. Now, forgive me if I seem impertinent, madame, but in my job, you and your husband have separate bedrooms. Does he still have sexual relations with you?
Most certainly not. Not for over a year.
For any particular reason?
Really, monsieur? I'm sure you found that out by now. I came across him and that girl in his office. It was disgusting.
You have a gun?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. Here, it's no more than a toy, I believe, but be careful, it is loaded.
6.33. Well, almost a toy. It could kill someone fired at point-blank range.
I haven't given it a thought. One of Emile's friends with a similar macabre sense of humour gave it to me on my wedding day.
Now, Jacques, I haven't had a chance to speak to him.
No, because he's still at school and he couldn't possibly have anything to do with those letters. I think you should go now, monsieur. This conversation's pointless. I see you place no importance on what I've told you. Forgive me if I don't show you out.
She almost banged the door in my face as I left her room. I didn't know what to think of her. I walked down the corridor to René Tortue's flatlet.
Ah, you must be Chief Inspector Maigret.
That's right. Have you a moment?
Yes, come in. You want to talk about the letters, I suppose? Yes, I know about them. Monsieur Parendon showed me photostat copies.
You studied law, I believe.
Until I failed my finals. Still, I know enough to do quite a lot of research for Monsieur Parendon.
And you write plays in your spare time?
Mademoiselle Varg told you?
Yes. How do you feel about her?
She's a very pleasant associate.
Are you in love with her?
That's a private matter, Chief Inspector.
Were you once?
No crime has been committed. I don't think you have the right to inquire.
Mademoiselle Varg is having an affair with Monsieur Parendon. Did you know that?
She told you?
Did you know? How do you feel about it?
It is no longer my concern.
No longer? Then you were once in love with her.
To think she told you. I suppose she had to. It must be hard for a girl like that to deal with a man like you. Although what it's got to do with those letters...
As a man concerned with law, you will appreciate that any detail may prove important. You see, we are taking these letters very seriously. What do you think of Monsieur Parendon?
He's a first-class boss. A nice man.
Madame Parendon?
Well, she's active, intelligent,
But you don't like her. Have you any idea who could have written the letters?
Well, as a would-be dramatist, I suggest someone who's afraid of what he might do. Someone who is a potential murderer who feels that things are getting out of control and who's imploring your help in an illogical way to prevent it. Perhaps someone unbalanced?
Could be. Sounds like a good plot. You might be able to use it in a play one day.
She told you about us as well. She shouldn't have done that.
I must get back to my office. What's the time, Luca?
Time to go home. Time for a beer en route.
Another one, Chief.
Huh?
Express delivery. Same printing, same envelope.
Lapointe, I can see it's addressed to me. Do you mind? Do you open your wife's letters?
Well, you're not my wife. I'm sorry, Chief.
Listen to this. Dear Monsieur Maigret, when I wrote my first letter, I could not have imagined you would charge head first into the case until I'd given you further indispensable information. Your haste has spoiled everything. Today you have provoked the murderer in some way. I may be wrong, but I feel that something will happen in the next few hours. I'm sorry I cannot help you. What do you make of that?
Well, it's serious, Chief. No doubt about that. Maybe Tortu was right. Well, then again...
Shut up for a minute, Lapointe. Luca, see if you can get Dr. Parendon, Emile's brother, on the phone. He lives in Nice. His number's in the file somewhere.
Right.
We should take these letters seriously, Chief.
Oh, we should. That's why I want you to spend the night with the concierge at the Avenue Marigny.
What? Oh, but my wife and I, we were...
Just to keep an eye on the place, to check on your suppositions. Seriously.
Well, yes, but I mean...
We live unexpected lives, Lapointe. Now, off you go. Luca will relieve you in the morning.
Oh, hell.
Dr. Parendon on the phone, Chief.
Go down and order me a beer, Luca. Dr. Parendon? Chief Inspector Maigret here.
Your beer's gone flat.
No, it doesn't matter.
You look worried.
I am. What can I do? If nothing happens, I'll be accused of wasting the taxpayers' money. If something happens, I'll be accused of incompetence. And if it does... I don't want to think about it.
What did Dr. Parendon have to say?
Well, he was surprised by the letters, of course, but he was interesting about his brother. He said Emile was one of the gentlest creatures alive who would never harm a living soul. But he said, too, as a doctor, that it was possible his brother might commit suicide in a fit of her he'd never have married. Well, I don't know what to think or do, Luca. Oh, let's have another beer. I didn't sleep well that night. I went to the office early. That last note had worried me. Lapointe came back to report after being relieved by Luca. Nothing of interest, normal comings and goings, no strangers. I sent him home to bed. I went on with my routine paperwork, but I couldn't concentrate. I had a premonition. Then... Maigret.
It's happened.
Who?
The girl.
Dead?
Yes.
Shot?
No. Stabbed. Butchered. Butchered.
I'll be right over. Oh, my God. Who found her, Luca? Monsieur Tortu?
I'm sorry. I thought... This is the first time I've seen it. I thought I was old enough to...
Oh, take your time.
She arrived at the flat this morning at about 9:10. I spoke to her in the corridor. She said she would be with Monsieur Parandon until about 9:30, and then she wanted me to come to her office to get some documents for checking. She was looking very pretty.
Go on.
Well, I came in here at about, I don't know, I suppose it was getting on for 10. I looked around. I didn't see her until I looked down on the floor behind the desk. Oh, my God.
Luca? I've done the routine, Chief. The doctor and the forensic boys should be here any time. What are you doing?
I was going to close her eyes.
Chief, the photographs.
I'm not thinking properly. I suppose you've got a brandy on you, Luca.
There's some in my room.
I've never been so shaken by the sight of a corpse as I was this time, even in my early days. The murder weapon, of course, was that razor knife. It was covered in blood. There was a dreadful gaping wound in her neck, and deep cuts on her arms and shoulders. She'd been wearing a pretty green blouse. It was in shreds. When the others arrived, I went to Tortue's room to try and pull myself together and think.
Enough, monsieur? I've spilled some.
Thank you. Does Madame Parandon know about it yet?
I didn't think to tell her she'll be asleep still. She often sleeps late. I told Monsieur Parandon. He took one quick look into Nicole's room.
Nicole?
That was her name. And went back into the library. There's a drop left.
Oh, you have it.
Thanks. I've always been in love with her. Ready to wait.
Yes, I know. The next hour or two was taken up with routine questioning. I got Yucca to drag Lapointe out of bed. All my other inspectors were busy, and I told him to question the neighbours, try and find out if they'd seen or heard anything. Then I went to the library. Monsieur Parandon was huddled in his armchair, his head bedded in his hands. He was so still I thought something had happened to him. And then he looked up.
The letters weren't a joke.
No.
I suppose you've come to arrest me.
Why should I?
Because I could have done it. I have no proof that I was here in my library at the time of death.
Oh, it's too early to arrest anyone. Have you told your wife what's happened?
I didn't think of it. Doesn't she know? I suppose she's still asleep. She often sleeps late.
So I've been told.
Were you surprised when you found out who the victim was?
Yes.
Did you think it would be me?
You or your wife.
And you've no idea yet who did it?
The only thing I'm certain of is that it was somebody well known to Mademoiselle Varg.
Why?
Well, she was struck when she was sitting at her desk. We can tell that from the position we found her in on the floor. Now, she must have seen the murderer pick up the razor knife from the pen tray as if to borrow it, but she went on working unworried, while the murderer, he or she, walked around behind her. Now, somebody from this household killed her, because I've had one of my men constantly with the concierge, and no strangers entered the building. And then there's another point. The murderer must have known of the knife, or he would have come armed.
Forgive my legal brain, Chief Inspector. The murderer could have come armed, then changed his mind, and used the razor knife instead.
It's a possibility I hadn't thought of.
She was very attached to me.
Oh, more than that, I had imagined.
Oh, yes. More.
Oh, my dear. I didn't hear you come in.
No, you were too busy shedding crocodile tears over that insignificant girl, both of you. Monsieur Maigret, I've only just heard of this deplorable incident. I suppose you were about to make an arrest. Jacques will be home from college shortly. It would be better if everything was cleared up by then.
I've come to no conclusion.
That's most unfortunate. Emile, why didn't you let me know?
Oh, because...
No, don't tell me. I can imagine. Was it because you killed her?
What? Are you suggesting that my wife suggesting
Oh,
that...
stop play acting! Did you or didn't you, Emile?
My wife, you know very well, for God's sake, I could never...
Well, Monsieur Maigret, I'm sure you'll draw your own conclusions from that performance.
I'm sorry I lost my temper, Monsieur Maigret. It's most unusual for me. Did my performance make it seem as if I were a little unbalanced?
Why should you think that?
It's often expected from somebody who looks as I do. But Nicole... No matter. Have you any further questions?
None for the moment. I'd prefer you not to talk to your wife until I've had a chance to talk to her.
Then you got lucky. It moved things along.
Or not lucky, more the result of you cars.
Hidden under the carpet.
Yes. I know it wasn't necessarily proof that the boy had written the letters, but it was enough for me. And when he got back from college... You've heard what happened, Jacques?
Yes, the concierge told me as I came in. Are you going to arrest my father?
I'm asking the questions, young man, not you. You're fond of your father, aren't you?
He's all right.
Did you like Mademoiselle Varg?
We were friends.
Did you ever go out with her?
No, of course not.
Oh, it wouldn't be surprising if you had, a young man like you growing into manhood.
What are you trying to make me say? I don't care if you are a police officer.
You went often to her office?
Yes.
To borrow things?
Yes.
Pens, pencils?
Yes.
You liked to be with her?
Yes.
And were you surprised to hear that she'd been murdered?
Yes. No. I mean, yes.
Yes, what do you mean, Jacques? You're getting confused. You expected that something might happen to your father, didn't you? But not Mademoiselle Varg.
I don't know what you're getting at.
It was you who wrote those letters and phoned the Quai des Orfèvres, wasn't it?
How did you find out?
It's not important. You wanted to protect your father, didn't you? You felt he was in danger?
Yes.
What kind of danger?
I'm not going to answer any more questions. Take me to the Quai des Orfèvres if you like.
I would if there was any point in it. It's too late. Mademoiselle Varg is dead. Are you very disappointed in me, Jacques?
I don't know. I wrote those letters because I thought you might have... I thought you were a man who would understand everything.
No, only a little, here and there.
I thought you might have...
Handled things differently? Yeah. I wish I had. I'd been tough on the boy. I was sorry about that. I wandered down to the kitchen. Madame Vauquin fed me. I was hungry. And she offered me a bottle of Chateau Latour. That was the vin ordinaire in that house. I needed it. I confess I drank more liquor that day while on duty than I've drunk before or since. I wanted to erase from my mind the sight of that young woman with her throat cut, the blood still warm. You know what I mean, Georges? You read about a murder, a catastrophe in the paper, but removed from a personal involvement. What do you get? A bit of a thrill, an excitement, almost a delight.
I'm afraid that's true.
Well, this time I wasn't an observer. I was a participant. I might have prevented the murder of this girl if I...
Jules, my old friend, why do you always have a sense of guilt about everything that happens to you?
Oh, I'm talking nonsense, because then suddenly, as in so many cases, it was all over. Nothing clever on my part, just the assembling of facts, the arranging of them in proper order.
I questioned all the tenants nearby, and I found one with some information. An old man. He was watering his garden quite early, between 9:30 and 9:45. Well, it's been a hot summer. And he happened to glance towards the Parandon house about that time. That's when he saw a woman walk along the corridor. She was wearing a blue housecoat. Where's that map? Yes. She was going towards the offices, here. And 5 minutes later, he saw her walking along the corridor, but in the opposite direction. And one other thing he noticed. Both times when he looked up, there was someone else in the corridor, dusting. Well, what do you make of that, Chief? Makes you wonder, eh?
The only thing I'm wondering about is what you have for breakfast.
Oh, wheat germ, of course, Chief. It's great. Or you should try it. It keeps you right on the ball.
Thank you, Lapointe. I am on the ball. Well, you can go home now. Sleep well. The case is solved.
Solved?
I may not be able to prove it, but I've a pretty good idea of what happened.
Ah, Monsieur Maigret, I was expecting you. So at last you're going to arrest my husband.
I don't see any reason for arresting him for the moment. Why, Madame Parandon, should your husband have killed his secretary?
Must there be a reason for a man like that?
One doesn't usually commit murder without reason.
Oh, one can imagine one. I don't know. Perhaps she was pregnant.
He might have been pleased.
What nonsense. She could have been blackmailing him.
Again, for what reason?
I haven't the slightest idea, a girl like that. I've merely suggested it as an example.
Quite. Madame Parandon, I must ask you a question, and I advise you to think carefully before you answer. Did you leave your room between 9:30 and 9:45?
No, I did not.
Look, I warn you. If you lie to me, I shall ask the examining magistrate for a warrant for your arrest. Remember, I have statements from everyone in your household regarding their movements during that time except yours.
I said I did not.
You didn't set foot in the corridor?
No.
You didn't go to Mademoiselle Vargue's office?
I consider this interrogation an insult.
And you didn't kill her?
You know perfectly well. Right from the start, I told you it was my poor husband.
Why should he have killed her?
I've told you. In his condition, there's no need for a reason. When he was 17, he tried to commit suicide. Ah, you didn't know that, did you? And when Jacques was born, he was afraid he'd grow up an idiot. He's always been haunted by the fear of illness and death. Well, that celebrated Article 64. Isn't that proof? That he's afraid of himself.
Would you ring for your maid, please?
What has Lise...
Please? Have you handled your revolver since yesterday?
Of course not. Why?
Oh, thought I had. You won't mind if I take it? You remember I placed it back in your drawer myself. Therefore the top fingerprint should be mine, if what you say is true.
Yes.
You rang, madame?
Monsieur Maigret would like a word with you.
Lise, you were dusting the corridor this morning between 9:30 and 9:45, is that correct?
Yes, I always do it about then.
And did you see Madame Parandon going in the direction of the offices?
Oh, madame, what should I say?
You should tell the truth, Lise.
Well, yes, it's true. Oh, I'm sorry, madame.
Oh, what does this prove?
It confirms another witness's statement, and that you have lied. You did leave your room, and that leaves you open to suspicion.
I do not have to account for my movements in my own house.
In a case of murder, I'm afraid you have to.
Does that mean you're going to arrest me?
I'm going to ask you to come to the Quai des Orfèvres with me.
Have you a warrant?
A blank one. I only have to write in your name.
And then?
It will depend on the magistrate. More probably, the doctors.
Oh, God, no. You think I'm mad? It was my husband. He killed her.
Madame, I can't prove anything very much, but I'm sure this revolver was in the pocket of your housecoat when you went along the corridor about 9:30. We can check up to a point, as I've just said. When you came into the library earlier today, I realized how much you hated your husband. And, of course, there's what you said about him yesterday to me. I even wonder if you didn't intend to kill your husband and not Mademoiselle Varg. Supposition, of course. You walked down the corridor intending to kill him, and then you made some kind of substitution in your mind. Would your husband not suffer more if you killed Mademoiselle Varg instead, and at the same time made him appear guilty of the crime? You went into the office, saw the razor knife.
You really think I'm mad, Chief Inspector? You really think I'm mad?
If you'd like to pack an overnight bag, you may go to the Quai des Orfèvres in your own car.
Oh.
I'll tell your chauffeur.
Article 64. If the accused was in a state of dementia at the time of the act, or if she was driven to it by an irresistible...
I suppose so.
Has she confessed yet?
No.
Will she?
I don't know. Perhaps in time. A week, months, a year. Any more wine left? Oh, yes. Have you ever seen a young woman with her throat cut? Good health, Georges.
In Maigret Hesitates by Georges Simenon, translated by Lynn Moyer, and adapted for radio by Edward Bruce, Maigret was played by Maurice Denham, and Simenon by Michael Goff. Luca, Brian Haynes. La Pointe, John Rye. Parandon, Anthony Hall. Madame Parandon, Maddie Head. Mademoiselle Varg, Shirley Dixon. René Tortou, Anthony Vickers. Jacques Parandon, Brian Hewlett. And Lise, Jane Knowles. The play was produced and directed by Betty Davis.
Simenon's Maigret, a series of plays based on the novels of Georges Simenon.
I would never have thought it, Jules.
Thought what, George?
That we two would be sitting in this spacious glass house in the middle of a large park, watching the rain teeming down and drinking water.
All this stuff is good for our livers, George. Years of misuse.
That's your diagnosis, remember.
Vichy. No doctor sent me here. I'm perfectly well, fit as a fiddle.
Well, we both came of our own free wills. You must give it time, and in a few days you'll feel a different person.
I already feel very different, believe me. Unwell and foul-tempered.
You must accept your situation, Georges, and drink up. When I first came here over 10 years ago...
Yes, I know. You were far from well and a doctor.
Maurice Denham as Jules Maigret, and Michael Goff as Georges Simenon in Maigret Takes the Waters, translated by Eileen Ellenbogen and adapted for radio by Frederick Bradman.
Oh, it wasn't any doctor, you know. It was my old friend Pardon. Louise and I were dining with the Pardons when I, well, to be honest, almost fainted. Without reason.
Overwork? Not enough sleep? Too much drink?
Probably a bit of each. Oh, it was June. Paris was sweltering. I was just turned 50 and felt 90. Pardon examined me immediately after dinner. There was nothing seriously wrong.
And he suggested the cure at Vichy?
For 3 weeks, under the care of our friend Dr. Rian.
And you didn't try to wriggle out of it, find excuses?
No, Georges. Like you, I accepted my fate.
You mean you were Shanghai?
Well, for my own good. Within a week that June, I found myself sitting in this park, Louise by my side, watching the people come and go. One evening in particular, the municipal band playing and the shadows lengthening across the green.
Do you realize, Jules, it's been 5 days?
I feel as if I've lived here all my life, Louise.
Vichy's that sort of a place. A kind of second home. There she is again. A lady in lilac.
And she's got her white shawl on, I see.
I wonder, is she a widow? No, I don't think so. That face is an old maid's face.
What age is she, 40, 50? Hard to tell. Do you think she's deaf?
Deaf? Why? Yes, she could be. I mean, she doesn't seem to see or hear anything.
No, not the music, certainly. On the other hand, she doesn't move with that carefulness I've noticed in the deaf.
She should be in a nun's habit, don't you think?
I'd say she likes her own company, likes solitude.
And comes here every year, or twice a year.
Oh, no, I don't think she's a visitor. She belongs. This is her town.
What a way for us to go on. Do you think other people are doing the same about us?
Well, so long as nobody recognizes me, I don't mind.
Would you like a little stroll?
No, I'd sooner sit here and have a pipe. You go if you want to.
I'd like to. Just for 5 minutes.
All right. You're going to be all right, Jules. Thought you were at the beginning of the end, didn't you, damned idiot? What did Dr. Rion say?
ERS perfect. Cholesterol a little on the high side. Nothing we can't deal with. No need to worry about uric acid. Blood count could scarcely be better. Treatment? I want you to alternate between 2 springs, Chamel and Grand Gris. I've written down what you should take and your diet. There's nothing wrong with you, but a thorough clean-out won't cure.
Ah, there goes Our Lady of the Lilacs. Nobody in the world but her. And there's Louise. We pass each other. Louise smiles. Lilac Lady doesn't register. That walk, so prim and so infallible, never a foot wrong.
I smiled at her. Did you see?
Yes, I did. And you have a lovely smile, Louise. But she wouldn't be able to tell, would she? I suppose she must know somebody here.
We should have her followed, perhaps. Oh, it's a lovely evening. You're not finding it too awful, Jules?
Awful? No, that's the last thing. It's another world. I enjoy the strangeness of it. And something else, this summer in Paris, I had the feeling that everybody I knew was younger. Or that I was older than everybody, even old Yukar. Terrible. Now I'm already beginning to feel quite a young 50-year-old, and that's something. Now, come on, my girl, let's have a brisk walk back to the hotel.
We're staying at that same hotel, I take it, Jules.
Oh, where else could we stay? It hasn't changed.
Go on, you have my interest. The Lady in Lilac.
Well, Louise and I had gotten, as our Yankee friends say, into a steady routine. Louise insisted on taking the cure also. 2 glasses of the Gris Spring in the morning, walks, a light diet, 2 glasses here at the Chamel in the late afternoon.
And never a glass of wine?
No, naturally not. And we watched our fellow cure-takers and wondered about them. And, of course, the Lady in Lilac still teased us. We always noticed her. We even noticed that she didn't appear one evening in the park, not to listen to the band.
And you then discovered that she was the best con woman in that part of France.
You've a point there, Georges. I've never considered. Do you know, I actually like this stuff.
Keep to the Lady in Lilac, please.
We didn't get up all that early, and I'd sit around in my pajamas, drinking coffee, eating croissant, reading the local papers, and the daily Journal de Clermont-Ferrand. Now, the morning after Our Lady of the Solitudes had not visited the park in the evening... Good grief. I'll be damned. Louise?
I'm cleaning her teeth.
On the front page, a picture of the Lady in Lilac.
What's she done, Jules?
Allowed herself to be murdered.
Murdered? Let me see.
She lived near here, the Rue du Bourbonnais. She did live in Vichy, as I thought. Owned her house, let furnished rooms on the first floor.
Says she was strangled. How horrible. The poor woman. Well, who would do that to her? Was it a sex thing?
Oh, they say not. The place was ransacked. Nothing seems to have been taken. There was money and jewels in one drawer. 2 of her lodgers found her yesterday morning in her sitting room.
Who's in charge of the case?
Oh, how should I know?
You mean that you don't want to know?
No, it says here something about the super in charge of the Department of Criminal Investigations being one Lecoeur. It's probably the Lecoeur who was with me in Paris at one time.
Will you be paying him a visit? I never understand, Jules, how you find your way through the back streets to where you want to go. And you don't even know these streets.
Well, it's a policeman's sense of direction.
Is it really? And you're always complaining that young Laplante could become lost in his own back garden. Where are we now?
The Rue du Bourbonnais. The dead woman's house? Across there.
Ah.
What's it called? Can you see?
Just. The irises. There's a milkman trying to deliver the milk.
Oh, he had his order, and until it's cancelled. The iris, isn't it? Not the lilacs. A pretty house.
Chief Inspector Maigret.
Yes?
Sir, Divisional Inspector Lecoeur sends his compliments and asks you to join him at the scene of the crime.
Ah.
Where shall I wait for you, Jules?
Well, the usual place at the spring. I won't be long. All right, young man. Lead on. Did you know I was here in Vichy?
The Vichy police picked up your name on the hotel registration form, and of course they've seen you around in general with Madame Maigret. I do hope she's well.
Oh, she's fine, and waiting for me. I'm the one here for the cure.
Yes, I guess so, Chief. But I wondered if you'd be interested. It's not a run-of-the-mill murder.
Nor is there such a thing. All right, Lecoeur, my old friend, who was she?
Hélène Lange, unmarried, 47, born at Marcilly, near La Rochelle. Mother and father dead, but I discovered she had a younger sister, Francine Lange, unmarried, owns a hairdressing establishment in La Rochelle. She's been in Mallorca on holiday. I got hold of her, and she's on her way here.
This room, the dead woman's parlour, I take it?
Yes, Chief. The photographs are of her.
So I see. Only of her. Not a single shot of anybody else. She alone.
Yes, I hadn't noticed. 'Tis odd.
What do you know about the murder?
Well, not very much. The night before last, Hélène Lange had supper alone, 2 boiled eggs, washed up and went out. She was wearing a lilac-coloured dress.
And over it a white shawl.
Yes, that's so. How do you know, Chief?
Oh, my wife and I saw her sitting in the Chamel Park the night before last, about 9:30. She was alone. She was always alone.
That sounds as if you knew her.
Well, Louise and I had noticed her, the lady in lilac, we called her. Very solitary lady, and I suspect rather out of the ordinary. She had a way of walking as if there wasn't a soul within 10 metres of her. Yeah, but do go on, Lecoeur, it's your case.
Well, there's a couple from Grenoble have 1 bedroom on the first floor, the Maleskis. Madame Virvo has the other. She's 60-odd and very self-important, a duchess in disguise. Well, the Maleskis are very nice. They stay here every year for a few weeks. Well, the night of the murder, they were at the cinema, got back about 11:30. Hélène Lange's shutters were closed, as usual, but they noticed that the light was on in her living room.
Did they hear anything?
Well, Maleski not. His wife thought she heard a murmur of voices, but she's not sure. Well, they went to bed and slept undisturbed. The Dowager Duchess was out playing bridge. She walked home, and she swears that as she came round the corner, she almost bumped into a man hurrying away. Well, he put his hand over his face to avoid being recognised, according to our witness, and was very tall and powerfully built, with a chest like a gorilla.
What do you think?
Well, she knew about the murder when I spoke to her. She could have a vivid imagination, but no, I don't think she invented the man.
Endowed a hurrying home passer-by with a dramatic quality, eh? Still, stranger chances have occurred. And when she arrived at the Irises?
Oh, all the lights were out and there wasn't a sound. Madame Virvo went to bed in a state of shock. One doesn't bump into a giant rushing away from the scene of the crime every day, does one, Chief?
No. Who found the body?
Well, the Maleskis called the police when they found the dead woman's room shut up and not a sound. And they had to break in. The key to the living room door was missing. The other rooms were locked from the inside. They found her in this room. You've read the newspaper reports, I take it?
Yes. Strangled. Not touched otherwise. Nothing taken in the house, but everything turned upside down. I wonder what he was looking for. She lived here for long?
Yeah, 9 years. She bought the house then. I've been in touch with a lawyer. She paid for the place with cash. A small suitcase of notes. He's never known it happen before or since.
Did she have a bank account? No, I mean, not then.
Yes, with the Crédit Lyonnais. A young Dissel has just got back from there. Come and tell the chief what you found out, Dissel.
Yes, Inspector. Shall I come in?
Well, it would save us straining our ears.
Yes. She was worth just over 500,000 francs, Chief.
She was a rich woman.
Rich and single.
Tell me, Dissel, did she pay money into her account regularly?
Well, Chief, not on a set day. But she paid in a basic 5,000 francs a month, the manager told me. And during the season, when there was money coming in from her lodgers, a few thousand more some months.
The 5,000 francs, was that in cash?
In cash, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Dissel.
Thank you, my boy. Yes, always in cash.
The postman tells me she received very little post. Nothing, really, except circulars and bills. Thank you, Chief.
And the neighbours say she never had a visitor.
Oh, they'd know, wouldn't they, in a street like this?
Well, the Moleskis have stayed here for a few years now, but as they say, they know nothing of her. They've only ever been in this room, her part of the house, once, for 2 minutes.
It adds up. Solitary and secretive flicker. And who killed such a woman, and why?
And who gave her the money?
Did she ever leave Vichy?
Yes, she did, so it seems, for a day or two at a time each month. Once again, at different times.
Do you know how she travelled?
No, not for sure. But the couple next door say she was collected by a taxi, so it'll be easy enough to find out.
If she went by train, I think it'd be worth your time to find out where she went. And when she got back, did she pay money into the bank?
Yes, I'll do that, Chief. Could it be blackmail, do you think?
Perhaps she was paid to be solitary and silent. Now, I must be on my way. I'm late for my first class as it is.
I waited for you to arrive, Jules, before I took my first class. Didn't seem right without you. After all, it is your cure.
It is my cure, but thank heavens it isn't my case.
Is it difficult?
Probably unsolvable. The sister should help when she arrives. What I ask myself is, why did she come to Vichy?
Why not Vichy?
Well, why not the town near her home village, La Rochelle? Her sister is there. Why Vichy?
Well, Jules, one can quite easily get lost in the crowd here.
Yes, you're right. It's obvious if you come to think of it. Now, this town virtually changes its population about every 3 weeks. In any other town of this size, she would be known, certainly after all the years she's been here, by all and their uncles. But here...
One would take her for just another visitor.
Her neighbours, it seems, know little about her. But her neighbours will be busy finding out about their guests, talking about the latest batch of visitors. Well, that's the first class. We'd better have our second.
We must have our second, or you must.
Did you know the Vichy police are watching my every move?
I can't see anybody in here who remotely resembles a policeman.
The water comes out looking incredibly clear, doesn't it?
Do you think the inhabitants of Vichy ever drink it? And what about the police?
Oh, I reckon they prefer their beer. Now, come and sit down. I have a few more questions.
It's nice you being on holiday, so that you can talk about a case.
Well, it doesn't happen to be my case.
No, dear, of course it isn't.
Now, why that night in particular?
The night she was killed, you mean?
Yes. Why that night? Why not the night before, or the month before?
Because the murderer seized his chance, perhaps?
She was solitary, she had a lonely routine. Nobody seems ever to have visited her, and she never visited a soul in the town. So to murder her on any night would, on the face of it, be quite simple. That is, if a local man was the murderer. But what sort of reason would he have for strangling her? And what was he looking for? And why that night in particular?
Perhaps it was somebody only in Vichy on that night. A visitor.
Good. Let's see it like this. Since we've been here, we've been noticing the same people 2 or 3 times a day, in this place, in the parks, where the band plays, and so on.
That's true. Some of them I feel I've known for years by sight.
Good. Now, this is our first visit. It'll probably be our last. But, Louise, if we were to come back next year at the same time, we'd probably recognize quite a few faces from this first visit, including the lady in lilac, if she hadn't met her with her death.
Well, that's true, too, Jules. What are you trying to say?
that there's somebody else in Vichy for the first time, like ourselves, going through the same routine, going to the same places. And like us, he must have seen Helene Lange once or twice.
And he recognized her, you mean? He hadn't seen her for years.
It took time, maybe, until he was sure, but there was something he wanted to talk to her about, something from the past.
You said her sisters expected. She'd know about the poor woman's past, wouldn't she?
Some of it, anyway. Of course, one can narrow down the suspects in Vichy at this time to a few hundred.
Can one? I'm not going to guess, Jules.
Well, according to the official brochure, people pour in for the cure at the rate of 30,000 a month at this time of the year. And about a third of them are here for the first time.
10,000. And Jules, of that 10,000, there must be over half that are women. Could a woman have strangled her?
No, it was a strong man. Right, 5,000 men. Now, I'd say, from what I've seen these last days, that at least 75% of the men here are too old or too feeble or too sick to strangle a sparrow. So that leaves us with
1,250. Oh, that's still an awful lot, Jules.
I'll tell poor Lecoeur. 1,250 suspects. So all he has to do is to eliminate those with foolproof alibis, and the rest is easy. He's probably thinking the same way himself. The sister may help, but not if she's like the dead woman, that's for sure. Well, yeah. Have you drunk up?
Yes.
Time for our walk back to the hotel.
A light lunch, and you will have your afternoon nap.
Oh, I don't actually sleep, you know. I only relax and doze a bit.
If I said, Jules, you were asleep and snoring, he'd say I made it up. Now, who can that be? Yes.
Ah, Madame Maigret, I'm Inspector Lecoeur. Is,
Yes. See for yourself.
I was passing. I need advice. I'm sorry, I'll come back.
I think it would be as well. He is here to rest, monsieur.
What's going on?
Inspector Lecoeur has called Jules, but he'll come back later.
I was just passing the hotel, Chief.
Oh, well, do come in. Do shut the door, please. What's happened?
Do have a chair, Inspector.
Fell sound asleep. Got a problem, have you?
Well, in a way, yes, or rather, it could be a problem.
You've found the murderer, and it's turned out to be the mayor.
If you knew our mayor, I'd happily arrest him. No, it's the sister, Francine Lange. She's here, and she's identified the body, and now I'm on my way to talk to her. You see, she's quite a handful.
Is she like her dead sister? Doesn't open her mouth?
Well, with Madame Maigret here, it's hard for me to speak my mind.
Oh, monsieur, my husband and I have discussed every single type of human being at one time or another. I'm immune to shock.
Thank you, madame. Well, she's as unlike her sister as a woman can be. I suppose she must be 40, but she looks younger. She's blonde and with one hell of a figure. And she's wearing a sort of see-through dress, and she's not wearing a bra. She's not married. She told me she knew too much about my sex to marry any of us.
I take it you're sure she is the sister?
Oh, yes, quite sure. You see, I thought, Chief, that with you in the room, life would be easier. I mean, she's decided that she can treat me as she treats all her men, I imagine.
And you think she's likely to treat me differently?
Well, I think you'd know how to treat her differently. You are Maigret from Paris.
There, you see, Louise, the reputation I have with the ladies.
And those who are not ladies also.
Well, to the non-lady then, Lecoeur. Louise, I'll see you at the park at 5 o'clock.
If you're through with Francine by 5.
I've never been in my sister's house, you know.
Yes, so you were saying, mademoiselle.
And this is where she didn't entertain the gentleman friends she didn't have. The old maid's parlour.
She entertained one gentleman recently, mademoiselle.
One too many. Do you think I killed my sister?
She was brutally strangled, although she fought hard against her attacker.
Yes, she would. Have you any idea?
We've no idea who it was, no idea why it happened.
Will you tell us what you know about your sister? When did you last see her, for instance?
6 years ago. She came to La Rochelle, turned up out of the blue.
Now tell me what you know of your sister's background, Francine, as a young woman.
She went to secretarial college in La Rochelle, then she worked there. Then when she was about 23, she went to Paris and worked as a secretary. I followed her there a few years later.
Do you remember where she lived in Paris?
Oh, yes, well. She had a very nice flat in the Rue Notre Dame de Lorette. She must have been earning well.
Or somebody was paying for it.
If they were, they weren't getting value for their money. I've liked men. I still do. Elaine, never. I don't think there was ever a man in her life.
And yet I take it you got on well enough.
When we saw each other, yes. I turned to her once, and she was a real sister that time.
You were in trouble in Paris?
15 years ago. I had a child, a boy. Elaine found foster parents for him on a farm in the Vosges. We both used to go and see him. He was nearly 3 when he drowned in a pond.
It seems, mademoiselle, that your sister led a very lonely life.
Ever since she was a girl, she was happiest on her own. It could be maddening. She had such a very good opinion of herself, a sort of being self-satisfied.
Self-satisfied? She looks it in all these photographs of herself, don't you think? Somebody took them, mademoiselle. I wish I knew who.
Well, I took that one. A boyfriend of mine took that. The others? Probably she stopped somebody and asked them to hold the camera. If it was what she wanted, she wouldn't hesitate, believe me.
Presumably, mademoiselle, you've no idea how your sister lived.
I know she owned this house. I imagined always she lived by letting rooms.
Well, you'll be surprised.
She left no will, it seems, mademoiselle. You were therefore her sole heir.
Yes. Yes, I would be. Let me know, will you, when I can bury her? The sooner I can get away from this dump, the better.
So you stopped Lecoeur from saying you will be surprised to know that she died a rich woman.
Yes. I explained to him afterwards. Well, not that I could really explain, Georges. I felt only that this forthright sister wasn't perhaps as forthright as she might be.
And the less she knew what you knew, the better.
That is simply, Georges, if she knew about the 5,000 francs a month and discovered that we knew, she could try to obliterate the source.
Did you think that the sisters had been in something together?
Well, they were together in Paris. Elaine up until 15 years ago, Francine more recently. There was a gap in Elaine's life, by the way, between Paris and Vichy. But in Paris she had a nice flat in a smart district, on a secretary's salary. Oh, never.
Perhaps the answer lies in the past. Find out about Paris and you begin to put the thing together.
Well, we were lucky, or Lecoeur was. The police found that the concierge where Elaine once had her flat was still there. And she recalled that Elaine had a gentleman call her. He was then, she thought, about 40, heavily built, expensive clothes, well-groomed, and drove a large black American car. He called a couple of times a week, left around midnight, and they sometimes went off at weekends. This for about 4 years. Then Elaine suddenly left. She would have been 32 when she left Paris.
15 years ago, when Francine had her boy child.
Lecoeur still had a lot of work to do. Louise was becoming somewhat sardonic about my cure, suggesting that perhaps I should go back to Paris, as it'd be more restful. And the papers were having quite a time.
And look at this picture of you. Maigret takes the waters. You look as if you've taken more than just water.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I haven't had a drink for weeks.
We should leave for our afternoon drink of water in half an hour. So that is Francine Lange. I do see what you mean.
Mademoiselle Francine, whose sister was recently... Lecoeur should have seen to it that she wasn't mentioned in the press.
Why? Because she looks like a tart?
No, Louise, because the murder is still in Vichy in all probability. And if Francine knows more than she pretends to know...
Yes, I never thought. The man's still about. She could be in danger. Or she should have thought.
She didn't. Come in. Dissel, come in and shut the door.
Thank you, Chief. Inspector Lecoeur asked me to let you know the places that the dead woman visited over the last year.
Oh, good. Far away.
But before you do, I'll leave you. I'm just going down to the chemist, and when I get back, monsieur, we must leave for the Springs.
Very well, madame.
Well, now, how did she travel?
By train. The station booking chaps can't remember all the names, but some places stuck in their minds. Strasbourg, Brest, Dieppe, Carcassonne, which meant changing trains 3 times. Lyon was about the nearest town.
Paris?
Never Paris. The last trip the clerks remember was on the day of some big horse race. June the 11th to Reims.
And has the inspector checked with the bank account?
Mademoiselle Lange paid 5,000 francs into her account on June the 13th.
Ah, that fits, doesn't it? Probably stayed the night, back on the 12th, straight to the bank on the 13th. Thank you, Diesel.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, when is the funeral?
Tomorrow morning. The inspector will have a number of us at the cemetery.
That was certainly a quiet funeral, Gilles. The quietest.
Yes, the lodgers, 1 neighbour, Francine, 2 reporters, and about 30 police in various parts of the cemetery.
The sister. She looked very subdued.
Something's happened to her. Walk on gently, Louise. I want a few words with the lady.
All right. Don't be too long, though.
Mademoiselle, my wife and I came to pay our respects.
Thank you. I'm glad it's over. I'll leave this town this afternoon.
So soon? What has happened, Francine?
Nothing. I've just had enough.
There'll be quite a deal of business to attend to still, won't there? Your sister died a wealthy woman, as you must know. Did she help you set up your hairdressers in La Rochelle, Francine?
She came into some money years ago. She loaned me some.
Her lover must have been a rich man. I believe he gave her that money. 15 years ago. The first payment of many, Francine.
Perhaps she did have a lover. I don't know.
Well, you said the other day there was never a man in her life. Now, that child you had 15 years ago, where did you go to have it?
Why do you want to know?
Well, I'm not sure, mademoiselle. Where was it?
Burgundy. A village called Ménil-le-Mont.
And your sister went with you?
I told you. She was a good sister at that time.
Why are you frightened, mademoiselle? You are, aren't you? Are you afraid of the man who killed your sister?
I had a phone call this morning. He threatened me. So I'm going to clear out.
If he wants to kill you, Francine, he'll not stop trying when you leave Vichy, will he? You'll be just as good a target in La Rochelle, won't you?
This lady is Madame Dubois, Chief. Madame Dubois, this is Chief Inspector Maigret.
Oh, monsieur.
Madame Dubois is the switchboard operator at the Hotel de la Gare.
Francine's hotel. Go on.
Well, just by chance, she listened in to the call made to Francine Lange by a man this morning.
Oh, I don't make a habit of listening to calls, monsieur. Everybody believes we switchboard girls do, but we don't. Well, not all that often. Mostly we're too busy, and most calls are too boring to bother with.
Yes, but this morning you did because...
I wasn't busy, and the man had an odd voice, and he was in a phone box, and he wasn't the boyfriend phoning from La Rochelle.
Yeah, and the conversations with the boyfriend were interesting.
Oh, they were hair-raising, monsieur.
Yes, but what did this man say, madame?
He asked if she was Francine Lange. She said yes, she was. He went straight on and said it was of the utmost importance that she should stay on in Vichy for a few days, in her own interest, and he would be in touch again. Then he finished by saying that there'd be a great deal of money in it for her.
Thank you, Madame Dubois. Tell me, did he have an educated voice? I mean, you said it was odd.
Oh, the voice of an educated Parisian, monsieur. Odd, because it was wheezy. I had a friend once who was an asthmatic, and she used to wheeze just like that.
I know what you mean. Well, that is invaluable, eh, Lecoeur? And from a phone box, are you sure?
Oh, yes, quite sure. The public telephones have a certain sound to them. And when he asked me if there was a Mademoiselle Lange staying in the hotel, he hadn't closed the box door. You could hear the traffic. Then he closed it.
Yeah, I've had a number of other hotels checked on, Chief. He phoned 7 asking for our girl before he was lucky, and they, too, were sure it was from a phone booth.
You do know, monsieur, that Mademoiselle Lange left the hotel a few hours ago?
Yes, madame, we knew. She was in a hurry, Chief.
I'm told that she changed from her funeral black, paid her bill, and drove off in that smart little car of hers all in half an hour.
Did she? So the offer of money if she stayed had the opposite effect. What was she frightened of, eh?
I may be speaking out of place, but surely the man who phoned could have been her sister's murderer.
I'm sure he was, madame. But he doesn't intend to murder again. I don't think he intended to murder the first time. Now, he wants some information. Elaine Lange wouldn't give it to him. Perhaps Francine will. Only, whatever it is, she, like her sister, is in fear of having to give it. Do you follow me, Luca?
Yes, I think so, Chief.
I wish I did. What sort of information does a man want so badly he'll kill for it?
Well, kill a woman for it. That is of the utmost importance, madame. Look, it's none of my business, but I think you should keep a watch on the phone boxes near the main hotels. You know what to look for, and he'll phone again. Now, I must have my last 2 glasses of the waters. Thank you, madame. It's been a pleasure meeting.
Oh.
You're looking round, Jules, as if you expect the lady in lilac to reappear. It makes me shiver.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what I'm looking for. I swear this water tastes more bitter this evening.
It's the mood you're in.
He must have an overriding obsession. For 15 years. He never meant to kill her, only to get her to tell him the truth. Or did he discover something so monstrous, so unforeseen that...
I think you're actually sorry for her.
Well, his world has collapsed, as they say. Already he's reduced to escaping his wife so he can make phone calls from boxes.
Hello? Here's somebody leaving the hotel. Big chap. Expensive suit. In a hurry. Heading straight for the phone box across the road. Better radio in. Dussel here. Suspect in phone box in the Rue de Gaulle. Watching. Damn it, I think he's spotted me. Out of the phone box, going south towards Chomel Park. Not hurrying anymore. What's he up to?
You think he's with his wife?
Well, he can't phone from his hotel. How did he get away the night he visited Elaine? What was on at the Opera House, you know?
I think it was Tosca. Women like Tosca, I'm told, more so than men.
You could be right. But what sort of a man could love Elaine Lange?
Jules, there's a man over there, standing watching us.
So I see. The person I was looking out for, Louise, without realizing. Good evening, monsieur. Can I help you?
Good evening, Monsieur Maigret. Madame Maigret.
Monsieur.
I am Louis Pellardeau. Do you mind if I sit?
No, please, Monsieur Pellardeau.
As you can hear, I'm sure, I suffer from asthma. And I was hurrying earlier, but then I gave the policeman following me time to catch up.
It's that young sergeant, Jules. Dussel, isn't it?
Oh, over there, I see. He won't interfere unless I call him. Well, monsieur, you have something to tell me.
I hoped you'd be here. I have seen you in here in the evening, as I also saw Elaine Lange here one evening.
We called her the Lady in Lilac.
Good name for her. I hadn't seen her for 15 years. I'd no idea she lived here, and this is my first visit, so you see it was all fortuitous.
I must warn you, Monsieur Pellardeau, whatever you say could be used in evidence.
Yes, I know. I'll tell it all again to the local police, but I must speak to you first. You see, there's something I need to know. You're a clever man. You may well know the one thing.
So be it. Elaine Lange was your mistress?
Once, for some years. She worked for my firm. I've been married for 30 years. I was 40 when I met Elaine. It wasn't a very passionate affair, but I think I loved her.
And did she love you, monsieur?
There was only a glimmer of warmth in Elaine's nature, not enough for love. Although I believe that she would love our child well enough. Perhaps you knew she had a child 15 years ago.
She said she went to Burgundy to Maigret-le-Mont to have it?
Correct. It was a son, Philippe. She sent me a copy of the birth certificate and said that she wanted never to see me again. I understood. She said she would devote her life to bringing the child up if I would support her and him. But I must not see him until he was of age. So she would disappear and she would let me know where to send the money. She reckoned, correctly, that if I knew where she was, I wouldn't have the willpower not to try to see her. I'm rich. I gave her the money to buy a house. I gave her money also for her younger sister's education in a Swiss convent. Elaine was devoted to the upbringing of this sister.
If you'd met Francine Lange, as you wanted to, you'd have found her an unusual product of such an education.
Sir, that was a lie also. I knew nothing about my son. She only ever wrote to tell me where to send the money each month. I saw her in this park. I wasn't sure it was her at first, but the second time, yes. I followed her back to her house. She never noticed me. I don't think she noticed anybody. I had to see her. That Monday, my wife went to the opera at Tosca. I wheeze louder than the singer, so I don't visit the opera house. I found Elaine in this park. I followed her back, introduced myself. I don't think she recognized me. I forced my way in and asked her about the boy. She was very calm. She told me many things about him. I asked to see a photograph. She refused. I suddenly ceased to believe her. That room, there wasn't a sign of anybody in it, ever, but Elaine. I asked to know where the boy was. She sat there, said nothing. I opened her desk, some drawers, nothing. There wasn't a single thing. Letter, photo, school report, document. I took her by the throat to make her tell me the truth. I used too much strength. If only she'd shown a spark of feeling. Afterwards, I ransacked the other rooms. Nothing. Nothing. Was there ever a child? Is he long dead? Or an imbecile? I still wanted to know. So I tried the younger sister, and then I realized I was being watched.
I'll tell you, monsieur, what I believe to be true. You never had a son.
What?
Francine gave birth to a son at Maigret. She had it fostered, and it drowned when it was 2. Elaine registered it as hers. From then on, both sisters sat back and let you pay. Elaine's plan, I suspect. Practical and simple.
Monstrous. Monstrous. For 15 years, I believed I had a son.
He was quite right. It was monstrous. Ah, here's Louise. Come to see that we're drinking our medicine.
Have you both finished? Jules? Georges?
No, sit down, my dear. I haven't finished my drink or my story quite.
Which story, Jules?
When I last came here to take the waters.
Oh, that. Those 2 terrible women. That poor man believing he had a son. It was in this park, wasn't it, Jules?
Yes, just over there. He told us his story while Lecoeur and his chaps gathered to take him away.
What happened to him?
Well, he employed a good lawyer and the best advocate in France. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter with mitigating circumstances. His story was such they acquitted him. For once, I was glad to see a man who had killed walk free.
They took him for a ride, did those 2. Everything came out in the court about Francine. The money for her education, how Hélène claimed they were orphans, Francine's child.
Pelado. That was his name. A good man of business, but a complete sucker otherwise. And to take up with such a woman.
And to come to Vichy to take the waters. At least it didn't rain each day. But it did me good. Busman's holiday though it was.
In Maigret Takes the Waters by Georges Simenon, translated by Eileen Ellenbogen and adapted for radio by Frederick Bradlam, Maigret was played by Maurice Denham and Simenon by Michael Goff. Louise Maigret, Irene Sutcliffe, Inspector Lecoeur, Rod Beecham, Sergeant Dissel, Malcolm Edwards, Louis Pellardeau, Richard Caldicott, Francine Lange, Diana Eden, and Madame Dubois, Shirley Dixon. The play was produced and directed by Christopher Venning.
Simenon's Maigret, a series of plays based on the novels of Georges Simenon.
Hello, Jules.
Now, George.
Good Lord, don't tell me you've been playing cards. Patience.
Yes, just got out. Oh, I do now and again. And I don't cheat.
Give it up. It's an old man's game.
Well, then, my dear George, it's surely high time I took it up.
Is it? You know, I've always held the theory that it's people who are fundamentally impatient that are given to the wretched game. So you're an exception.
What? Maigret, the soul of patience? I don't think my chaps would agree with you there.
If you were, you'd be somewhat dull, perhaps, Jules.
I'd be a blooming bore.
There was one case of yours when you displayed monumental patience, I recall. For 20 years, in fact.
20 years? No, never.
You did, my old friend. A man called Palmari? A wheelchair? Doesn't that ring a bell?
Of course. Yes, it does, George. And to think I'd forgotten. Manuel Palmari. Yes, they'd crippled him, but he was still the mastermind behind the pinching of precious stones and the fencing of them. And for 20 years I'd tried to prove it.
Maurice Denham as Jules Maigret and Michael Goff as Georges Simenon in The Patience of Maigret, translated by Alistair Hamilton and adapted for radio by Frederick Bradnam.
Good morning, Chief.
Morning, Jean-Pierre. Morning, Lapointe.
Good morning, Chief. Did you have a good weekend?
Oh, couldn't have been better. The country was cooler than Paris, and I did a lot of gardening. Well, for me, that is.
It's going to be hot today. July heat. I don't like July heat.
You sound if you dislike everything this fine day, Jean-Pierre.
He does, Chief. He's up a cul-de-sac without a compass.
Very funny. No, look, Chief. This is the third breaking of a jeweller's window in 2 weeks. The same pattern. 2 youngsters in stocking masks. A driver, also young. Dark-haired and sunburnt is the best we can do for descriptions. Break the window with a tire lever, sweep up the fancy goods, and away.
When was this last shop?
Friday afternoon, the Boulevard du Montparnasse. And the whole point is that, like the other 2 shops, this shop had only put the valuable stuff in the window the day before. A new collection of emeralds, so somebody knows something.
Oh, for sure. A man in the trade, somebody who does the round of the jewellers, but probably not selling jewels. If he sees the windows full of the right stuff, he sounds the alert, and the boys come in from the country. It's been going on for 20 years.
Yes, I remember you saying.
I've tried traps. I've checked on hundreds of commercial travellers.
Yeah, I've kept 2 chaps watching Palmari's place, as you suggested.
I bet it's Jeannin who follows Palmari's girlfriend, Aline Boche, when she bounces down to the shops.
Yeah, and she's given him the slip once or twice. Otherwise, nothing.
Oh, I'll get it.
Oh, there it is. You had to be patient. I have for 20 years.
20 years?
Yes, Lapointe speaking.
Like old Joe.
Yes, and I'm still sure Manuel Palmari is and always has been the boss.
Palmari?
Yeah. What?
Yes, I'll tell him at once.
Did you say Palmari?
Yes, Chief. He's been killed in his flat. Found shot in his wheelchair.
Talk of the devil, eh?
Wow.
Oh, well, I was rather fond of the old villain. 20 years, eh? Now, come on, both of you. The sooner we're on the spot, the better. Tell me what you know, Cléardin. And where's Aline Boche?
In her room, Chief.
Janvier, go and keep Aline company, will you? I'll join you in a moment.
Right, Chief.
It's the door at the end of the passage.
Yeah, thanks.
Is she,
Yes. She's lived with Palmari for 4 or more years now. 30 years or so younger. He took her from the streets. She looked after him well, like a nurse. So, what do you know?
Not much. The men are going through the place now, as you can see. Aline Boche says she gave him his breakfast, washed him, went out to the shops, leaving him in his wheelchair. This about 9. Usual routine, it seems. She got back at 5 to 10. She saw the mantelpiece clock and found him dead.
I see. Where's the body now?
Well, we finished with the cameras, so the doctor had it taken into the bedroom.
Lapointe, ask the doc if he's anything for me, will you?
Yes, Chief.
What time did you get the call? From Aline, I think.
It was logged at exactly 10:15, and yes, she made the call.
10:15? You asked her why it took her 20 minutes.
Well, I haven't asked her anything very much. But I wondered if she was back later than she said.
The chaps watching the place should confirm it or not. Send somebody down to ask them in a moment. What else?
The body had slipped to the floor. There was a lot of blood.
Ah, Dr. Paul, nobody told me it was you. Get that man down to the chaps watching the place cleared on. Her time back is important.
I'll do it myself.
Who else did you think it would be?
Well, what I meant was nobody said Dr. Paul. Anyway, can you tell me anything of interest?
Well, 3 shots were fired into him. The one that probably killed him was fired from behind, into the back of the neck and up into the brain pan, at point blank just about.
The other 2?
Into his chest, from the front. They missed the heart and were fired from a few feet back. They wouldn't have killed him at once, or at all, probably.
Oh, thanks, Doctor. Have we got the weapon, Lapointe?
There was a Smith & Wesson 38 on the floor, Chief. I gather that the girls said it was Palmares.
A Smith & Wesson 38, Doctor?
Yes, I would have said that was about right. I'll let you know for certain when I've done the post-mortem.
Good. Lapointe.
Yeah.
Go and have the usual word with the concierge, get a list of the tenants, and ask if she saw anybody come in between Aline's leaving and returning.
Yes, Chief.
Lapointe.
Yeah?
See if she knows who takes the rent, the landlord or his agent.
Right.
Clairdon, what about those times?
Inspector Janin followed her round the shops. She set out at about 9:03 and returned back at 9:53, which gives her 2 minutes to get up to the flat. The other detective confirms these times.
Well, it adds up. She was back at 9:55. They saw nobody else enter the building?
Nobody but the butcher's boy who delivered meat to the concierge.
Yes, and it was somebody already in the building, or... Well, thank you, Clairdon. I suppose it's time I had a word with the girl. The door at the end of the passage, you said?
That's it, Chief Inspector.
Well, Janvier, you looking after Mademoiselle Boche nicely?
Not easy, Chief. She doesn't seem to like us.
Oh, I know that, don't I, Alex?
I don't want to talk to you, pig.
On the other hand, I had a soft spot for Manuel Palmari. As villains go, he wasn't a bad chap. I'm sorry he's dead, Alan.
And don't you think I am? Poor Daddy. Why did they have to pick on him?
Who did pick on him?
I don't bloody know, do I? It's just awful.
I know. And it's murder, too.
Yeah, you think I killed him, don't you? You think I did it? You would. You would.
No, pour her a drink, Janvier.
Right, Chief. There's some brandy.
No, just the thing. No, Aline, I know you didn't kill him.
Here you are, mademoiselle.
Drink that and listen. Look, try to help me. I want to find who it was who killed him. For the moment, I just want to ask you 1 or 2 questions.
Well, what do you want to know?
That's better. Now, first, where did Manuel keep his revolver during the day?
In his little corner room, where he always sat. Behind the radio so that he could reach it.
Of course. When you came back from shopping this morning, where did you go first? Into which room?
Well, I think I went in the kitchen. Well, I usually do. Unless Manuel calls me as I come in. I put the things down that I've bought. Well, I must have done that.
Well, let's ask Janvier to go and see, shall we?
Okay, Chief. Were they in a bag, mademoiselle?
In a string bag, yeah.
And then you went into the little room to see if Manuel was all right.
Yeah, like I always do.
Did you see that he was dead?
I saw that he was on the floor. There was a lot of blood. I think I screamed, you know. I saw the gun.
Aline, almost 20 minutes passed before you phoned the police. Didn't you think of calling a doctor at once?
No. No, I mean, he looked so dead. I mean, it was obviously dead.
So what did you do? For almost 20 minutes.
You're trying to catch me out, aren't you? You bloody would. Soft-soaping me first. Still a lot of tricky questions.
Look, there's nothing tricky about my question, Aline. Nothing. What did you do for almost 20 minutes?
The shopping's on the kitchen table, Chief. Still in its bag.
Thank you. Oh, Janvier, if you found a body, what would be the first thing you'd do?
Ring the police and then the doctor.
You took 20 minutes to do one of those things, Aline.
I don't know. I just stood there for, well, I don't know, minutes. After that, I think I walked up and down the flat. I mean, just sort of talking to myself. I don't know for how long. I mean, I wasn't looking at the blooming clock, was I? And then I thought I'd better let you lot know.
All right, Aline, it makes sense. You'll have to be tested, the gunpowder test, to see if you fired the gun.
I didn't kill him. Monsieur Maigret, he was everything to me. I mean, my man, my child, and my father.
I'll have to leave somebody in the flat with you. Well, I'll get you a relief, Janvier, once they've cleared up in the other rooms.
Oh, yes, Chief. Thanks.
Now, do you know your neighbours in this building, Aline?
No. You know that Manuel wouldn't have much to do with anyone. Well, he couldn't, could he?
I'm sure that the concierge knows all I need to know, and I'm sure Lapointe has discovered all about everybody. I'm truly sorry, Aline. He should have been left alone.
I've covered the top floor, Chief.
That's the 7th, isn't it?
Yes, it's attics, really. Most are lived in by the maids. There's an old man in one room who's deaf and dumb, Jeff Klaas. He was wounded in an air raid in Belgium in 1940.
Where are we going now?
3rd floor, Chief.
Huh?
Where you've just come from.
Lapointe,
No, seriously, Chief. The couple in the flat on Palmares Landing were both out. In with Barillard. He'll be out all day, but his wife is only shopping, and the concierge tells me she's back. I thought you'd like to see her yourself.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Who owns the block? Does she know?
Well, she's the obstructive sort of concierge. But I got out of it that Palmari did own the building. Up until a few months ago.
And now?
It's in the name of Mademoiselle Aline Boche.
Is it? You must have loved her. Give the bell a ring.
Right. I imagine Palmari was pretty well off, Chief, wasn't he?
Well, I'd say yes, but I don't know. I can only guess.
Madame Barillard?
Yes. Do come in.
Thank you.
You're the police, I'm sure. And you're the famous Chief Inspector Maigret, that I know.
Inspector Lapointe and I would like to ask you what you know, if anything, about the business next door.
Come into the sitting room, please.
Yes.
Do sit down.
Thank you.
Saw the police pouring into the flat. I asked one of them, and he told me that Monsieur Palmari had been shot.
What time did you leave to go shopping, madame?
I went to the market, so I went early. Say, just after 8, and I only arrived back about 10 or so.
And your husband, Madame Barillard, he left when?
I don't know. He was here when I went off, gone when I got back.
He has no regular routine, then?
He's a sales representative, so his hours are pretty flexible. I think that today he was going to some suburban shops.
What is his line of country, madame?
Country? Oh, I see. He represents a firm that makes deluxe packings for chocolate or perfumery or jewelry or watches, that sort of thing. Today, he probably left about 9:30.
Did you know Manuel Palmari?
No. I knew he was crippled, and I sometimes heard him cry out.
Cry out?
Not in pain, with a sort of anger, a frustration. But we've lived here for 5 years, and I've never seen him.
And Aline Boche? Did you know her at all?
That's her name, is it? Aline? Oh, no, she's downright unfriendly. At first I used to say hello, but she'd look right through me.
Well, thank you, Madame Barillard. Tell me, you're not French, am I correct?
No, monsieur. I come from Belgium. I came as a little girl.
I see. Well, one of us, or both of us, will come back this evening to have a word with your husband. If he was here until 9:30, he may have heard or seen something.
I will tell him, monsieur. We rarely go out in the evenings. I suppose, being Maigret, you already know who killed the poor man?
That's what comes of having a reputation as a master detective, Jules. Take one look at the scene of the crime and you know who did it. Immediately.
Quite. Well, at this stage, of course, I didn't know who'd done it, but I had formed an opinion. Well, hadn't you?
The paraffin test proved negative on Aline.
It did. But she could have worn rubber kitchen gloves.
If it wasn't her, then it was somebody else that Manuel trusted implicitly. Somebody who had the key of the flat and could come and go when they wanted, and who knew where the revolver was kept.
Agreed. But Janvier had had that building watched day and night for a month. There wasn't a single visitor in that time for either Manuel or Aline. And on the morning of the murder, nobody but the butcher's boy had so much as crossed the threshold except for the tenants. And only 2 of them had entered the place between 9 and 10, Aline and Madame Barillard.
So we're left with the uncomfortable fact that if it wasn't Aline, and why should she kill her protector, it was somebody else living in that block of flats.
Well, Lapointe went through that building thoroughly. Some of the tenants were away, and the rest were totally unlikely to be murderers for any and every reason Lapointe and I could think of.
Now, Jules, wait a moment. One man.
Ah, yes, one man. We had to see him later, of course.
I imagine that Aline didn't ring the doctor because she knew Manuel was dead. Because she knew he was meant to be dead.
It follows, Georges. It followed, rather. And during the 20 minutes before she rang the police, I think she was using the phone.
There were a lot of people to let know that Manuel was dead.
I thought I'd find out about that. I saw to it that not a word of the murder got in the press that day. I knew that Manuel owned a restaurant in the Rue Fontaine, the Clou d'Arrêt. And early that evening I visited it with young Lapointe.
Good evening, Monsieur Maigret, Monsieur Lapointe.
Good evening to you, Pernod.
Evening. Have a drink with me? I was wondering if you'd call in.
I'll have a Pernod, thank you. Lapointe?
A beer, thank you. Danish, please.
I'll serve you myself. The barman's busy moving crates around. Yeah, no, ice and water. What do you think of it?
Huh?
Must have been an old score, eh? Pernod, monsieur?
Thank you.
Any ideas?
Well, not many. When did you first hear of it, Pernod?
Oh, I don't know. Beer, Monsieur Lapointe.
Ah, thanks.
I was being talked about in here by lunchtime. Why do you ask?
Cheers. Tell him, Lapointe.
Well, it was kept under wraps. There's nothing in the evening press. Not a reporter in sight.
Oh, search me. All I can tell you is that the buzz was going around the restaurant by lunchtime.
Do you own this place now, Pernod?
You talk about the news getting round. I bought it 5 days ago, in fact.
Oh, I was thinking aloud. You bought it from Manuel, did you? Just in time.
You make that sound as if it had some connection with his death.
Well, it may have had. Not that you'd know.
Actually, the restaurant's owned by Aline Boche. Manuel signed it over to her a couple of years ago.
Your first customers are coming in, I see.
Hi, excuse me.
Aline must be a rather rich young woman, Chief.
Yes. You see that fat, rather red-faced man?
Yeah.
Louis something or other.
An old friend of Manuel's, wasn't he?
Oh, once certainly. He's registered that we're here. If he leaves, follow him. I suspect he may try to phone the news of our presence to somebody.
Right. I'll do my best to get the number, too.
Yes.
They're an old friend of Manuel's. They know the news.
Yeah, I wonder what else they know. Manuel was very clever, you know, Pernod. He would give me information. He would even sometimes hand over to me the occasional small fish.
Well, if he did that, monsieur, in his line of business, then no wonder they crippled him once and killed him this time.
Excuse me, Chief, I must make a phone call.
The crippling was one thing, the killing quite another. Tell me, Pernod, do you know of any other property Manuel may have owned?
Well, the building he lived in? But you'd know that, wouldn't you? There was a hotel in the Rue de l'Étoile. The Bussière, a house of call, I've been told.
That's useful. Well, now, the point is, if there is a point, somebody shot Manuel at close range. Something he wasn't expecting.
To tell the truth, Chief Inspector, I thought... remember many of his friends still use this restaurant. I hear things. I thought Manuel had retired, shall we say.
His sort of villain doesn't retire. I think he was still setting things up. And that's no secret either.
What sort of things? I'm an innocent.
Keep that way. Jewel robberies, breaking shop windows, and that part is simple. The selling is the difficult thing.
Yes. Descriptions of the missing jewels are circulated. I'm told that all stones are traceable. They have their own identity.
There's Louis back. I can't remember his surname.
Oh, I didn't notice him going. I only know him as Monsieur Louis.
Now, the stones are sold to a fence and eventually put back on the market and more than usually traced, or say 60% of the time. Only the stuff stolen in the cases which I'm sure involved our dead friend never, it seems, came to light.
Which means, need I tell you of all people, they're unset and recut, transformed.
That's it. Only we've never been able to find the cutter. It's almost entirely a family trade. There's only about 50 of them in the whole of Paris, in one district, a very closed little set. Perhaps another 50 in the whole of France. Now, a crooked diamond cutter should be easy to find, but that can't...
Here's our young inspector coming back. Will you excuse me?
Oh, yes, of course, and thank you for listening to me.
Monsieur Lapointe?
Hello. He went and phoned, Chief.
Yes, I guessed as much. Drink your beer. You look as though you deserve it.
Yeah, I think I do. Well, I got a good view of him from the other box. He dialed 446842, then 39 or 38.
Yeah.
So I got through to the K and asked them to find the subscribers. There's no one on 38, but 39 is the number of one Fernand Barrière.
Ah, good, Lapointe. Very good. It's the sort of break we get rarely enough. I need to visit Fernand Barrière, as indeed I said I would.
Have you got enough to hold him on?
I don't think so, not yet. Things are tying up. Now, I want you to have a look at the other end of the knot.
Right, Chief.
Now, Pernell tells me the Manuel owned a rather dubious hotel. I've written it down.
Ah. Hotel Boussière, Rue de l'Étoile.
Yes, now go there, take a room if you have to. And take this.
Yeah.
It's a photo of Aline.
Right.
Discover if she visits by herself or with anybody. She's given Janin the slip more than once and done so recently.
Your room, monsieur?
Thank you.
You'd like a pretty girl, wouldn't you?
No, not really.
There's enough of them downstairs. Oh, you're one of them, are you?
No, I am not. I'm only interested in one girl at present. I have a photo of her.
Well, what do you want to know?
I want to know if you know her.
Know her? Come off, of course I know her. She's the blinking proprietress, isn't she? The owner of this high-class knocking shop.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't get it. Or do I? You're the police, aren't you?
Does she come here often?
Yes. Not so much as usual this last month. You won't breathe a word who told you, will you?
Not a whisper. What's her name?
Madame Boche. That's what we know her as.
Does she have an office here?
She has a room in a sitting room.
Does she have any visitors?
I don't watch, do I? I have a lot to do.
Like pimping for the guests.
Well, there's one chap. About 40. Dark hair and a thin moustache. Well-dressed. Always has a small suitcase.
Does he? The sort that sales reps carry, is it?
That's it. That's what he is, I'd say. That or a very successful brothel keeper, like Madame Boche.
Perhaps. I'm sure they discuss business.
Oh, they do that too, with the other. And I know they do that. I don't know any more, though, I swear.
Good evening, Madame la Concierge.
Good evening, Monsieur Maigret. Madame Barrière told me you'll be back to have a word with that flashy husband of hers.
He is in, I presume, Madame.
For the last hour, looking as pleased with himself as usual.
Good evening, monsieur.
He's deaf and dumb, old Jeff Klaus. Good evening, Monsieur Jeff. He can lip read. This is Chief Inspector Maigret, Jeff. Police. I don't think he wants to see you.
No, Monsieur Klaus, thank you.
I'm told he's not yet 70, though he seems older. All but for his hands. Steady as rocks they are.
Does he do any work, do you know?
Makes toys, pretty things. He has a workshop room up in the attic. Terribly badly wounded he was, all around the head in some air raid in Belgium in 1940, so he became deaf and dumb.
Do you know where he comes from in Belgium, by any chance?
I do, monsieur. From Antwerp. He has written things down for me to read.
Oh, thank you, madame. You've been most helpful.
It's Chief Inspector Maigret, Fernand.
Oh, thank you, Mina. Good evening, monsieur. Do come in.
Thank you.
Please sit down, Chief Inspector.
Thank you. Oh, I understand you're a sales representative.
I told him, Fernand, what you did.
And why shouldn't you? The police like to know such things.
Did you have a long round today, monsieur?
I left about 9:30, went to the Lila district.
You visit any jewelers, by any chance?
Not today. The Lila district doesn't go in for jewellery, or goes into the centre for it.
I suppose people phone you here about your work?
Yes, I do nearly everything from home. I thought you wanted to ask me about this morning.
This morning? What about this morning?
For crying out loud, a man was killed just across the landing.
Oh, Manuel Palmari, a villain. I don't suppose you knew him.
No, I didn't know him.
Nor did I know the woman he lived with.
Mademoiselle Aline Boche. Did you hear a shot this morning?
No, I'm afraid I didn't.
Oh, don't be afraid. Manuel Palmari was murdered by a ghost, I think. And ghosts come and go without being seen and fire shots that aren't heard.
I don't find that particularly funny.
Well, let's see if I can make you laugh in this way, then. This evening you had a phone call from a restaurant, the Clou d'Oreille, from a man called Louis. It doesn't amuse you?
Mina, leave us alone, please.
Yes, Fernand. I don't understand.
There is a misunderstanding, darling. I'll explain when I've cleared it up.
All right, Fernand, if you say so.
I'm against bringing women into business on principle.
Now, you said something funny, which I find amusing.
What the hell's funny about it? I prefer my wife to be kept out of this kind of thing, that's all.
Yes, I can believe that. Have you known Louis for long?
No, not for long, and only as a customer.
Ah, of course, a customer. He was a friend of the dead man, did you know that? It's a small world, isn't it?
Sometimes it is. Palmari must have had the same business connections that I had.
Yes, I think he may well have. And perhaps the same business partner. That is why I find your women and business remark rather funny, Barrière.
Monsieur Barrière, if you please.
May I use your telephone, Monsieur Barrière?
If you must, it's over there.
Thanks.
Well, what other nonsense have you to say to me?
You really think I'm talking nonsense, do you? Who's there? Oh, you, Jean, is it? How's our Aline? Is she? Well, I'll be across in a few minutes. Look, do this for me, will you? Ring the K and ask them to send another man to the building. Yes, to keep an eye on one Fernand Barrière.
What?
Not to let him out of his sight.
Now, listen.
I'll give him a description of the man when he gets here. Good. Thanks. Well, it'll take a few minutes for a chap to get here, Monsieur Barrière, so you'll have to put up with my company until then.
I have some returns to make. Would you like the television on?
Oh, no, thank you.
Have you finished?
We have. Come in and entertain the Chief Inspector.
You haven't done anything wrong, have you, Fernand?
No, my lamb, of course not. It's all in his mind.
You keep a record of all the shops you visit, I take it?
Good Lord, no. Only those I sell to. I don't like paperwork.
Sometime it'd be interesting to compare that list with the list we have, a very short list, of jewellers' shops which have been broken into this last month.
What is this? What can stolen jewellery have to do with Fernand?
200 of type 6, 150 of type 10, 50 of the chocolate, type 2, 100 of type 7, 300 of type 5. That was a good order.
I'll go.
No, let your husband answer it, madame. It's for both of us, in a way.
Don't worry, Mina. You know that the police can get hold of the wrong end of the stick at times.
I'm sorry to have caused you distress, madame.
You want the Chief Inspector, I take it?
Yes, please, sir. Ah, Baron, they sent you. Good. Now take a good look at Monsieur Barrière and don't let him out of your sight wherever he goes.
Right, Chief. I've got him.
Good night, Barrière.
Good night.
You seem to have upset him, Chief.
Not as much as I'm going to. No, I don't think he'll try anything, but park the car opposite and keep your eyes skinned.
All right, Chief. Are you coming down?
No, I've got another client on this floor.
All right.
Will be just as glad to see me.
Oh, come in, Chief.
Yeah.
The lady's looking forward to seeing you. I told her she ought to get dressed for you, but she said...
I'm sure he'd much rather see me half-dressed. Bloody men. They're all bastards.
I've just been talking to one, Aline. Fernand Barrière, who lives less than a stone's throw away. Attractive chap, I'd say, to women.
Should I know him?
Well, as the landlady, you should know all your tenants.
Oh, don't get lost.
And he appears to know a friend of Manuel's called Louis. A friend of yours also is Louis, isn't he?
Louis who? You don't catch me like that, Maigret.
Well, Aline, have you anything to tell me?
Only that I wish I'd never set eyes on you.
Yes, that may well be true, my girl. Did you know that Fernand Barillard was in the jewellery game also, like Manuel?
It's a small world, isn't it, Maigret?
That's what I said to him. Well, I'll be off. Barillard has a very nice wife, you know, Ali. Very gentle and kind. Odd, isn't it? I mean, how cold devils like our Fernand find nice girls to marry. No doubt their mistresses are quite different. More like you in temperament, I'd say.
Maybe I remember this case as well, if not better, than usual. Because for the most of it, you were working by normal deductive methods, not by your usual instinctive, or shall we say, psycho-instinctive methods. Is that fair?
I think so, Georges. Although one look at Fernand Barillard and I was sure he and Aline belonged together. And that was before Lapointe had reported to me on his hotel findings.
It was a neat setup, wasn't it? Barillard as the next-door neighbour. It's a wonder Manuel hadn't filled the entire building with his workforce.
Well, he only wanted 2 or 3 near him. Aline and Fernand as his eyes and ears to the world of precious stones beyond his reach, and one other.
Ah, yes, the cutter of precious stones, the magician who transformed stones so they would not be recognized. Was he near?
Well, that's where my so-called psycho-instinctive methods were letting me down. I knew that the answer was apparent. I'd seen it. And without realizing it, tucked it away in the recesses of my mind.
Where it could not be found without some help.
I even dreamed strange dreams around my cutter of precious stones. Dreams where I knew him, but he had no name, no face.
And then you went to see a diamond merchant, one Bernstein, taking Janvier with you.
They call this the precious stone market, Janvier.
They look like a lot of middle-aged foreign gents doing nothing and talking 19 to the dozen.
But if you watch carefully, passing stones to each other that are frequently worth many hundreds of thousands, and nothing on paper.
Well, it's nice to know there's some trust left in the world.
There's our chap, Bernstein. Monsieur Bernstein.
Ah, my friend Maigret. I have made the inquiries you asked me to.
Oh, that's good of you. This is Inspector Janvier, Bernstein.
How do you do, monsieur?
Pleased to know you. Now, Maigret, before the war in 1940, the main stone-cutting center was Antwerp, yes? Curiously, most of the cutters were, and still are, from the Baltic. In Antwerp, they had foreign cards, you understand.
Now, what happened when the Germans got to Antwerp in 1940?
They fled to Royan. Most finished up in the United States, although they've nearly all returned.
Now, wait. Could some of them have got to France?
Some did, I'm told. But as they were almost all Jews, they did not last very long.
But one of them may have done. Thank you, Bernstein. Thank you. Come on, Janvier.
Chief?
To the car and to where old deaf and dumb Jeff Klaas makes toys in an attic.
He's not in his room.
No, which is his workshop, madame?
Oh, all this fuss, and I have work to do. This is the room. There's no point in knocking. He can't hear, can he? Oh!
What is it?
Look, he's hanging.
Yeah, I think he's dead.
The shock has put years on me.
Oh, do shut up, woman. Listen, make yourself useful. Go downstairs and get the 2 detectives outside to come up. Hurry, hurry.
I'll never be fair.
Strange how many people seeing a man foully done to death can only think of themselves.
Oh, why would he hang himself? Just a minute, Chief. That bruise.
Yes. I'd say to guess that he was killed last night, probably when he was asleep, dragged in here and then strung up. The forensic boys should be able to tell us that.
And he cut the stones, did he?
Yes, he did. We'll find his tools where we look. And although deaf and dumb and a bit daft, he knew much too much. Poor old chap, I could have saved him. I understood the thing when I first saw him, and took no notice of my own understanding.
Chief, it's General Lapointe. Do you want us up there?
Lapointe, bring Barillard with you. Don't take no for an answer.
Right, Chief.
So for 20 years he's been cutting the stolen stuff.
Was he Manuel's find or Barrière? Oh, no, Barrière's too young.
Well, I have an idea that he was Mina Barrière's find.
What?
Only she's never known the use he was put to.
She was in it too?
Fernand! Why are you taking him? Oh, is it Jeff?
Let her come up, Lapointe.
She is, Chief, ahead of us. Oh, Barrière, up you go. Go on.
You know, in some ways, I would rather have her not see him dead. On the other hand...
Yeah, it must be very easy to kill a deaf old man in his bed.
Chief Inspector, I don't understand why you... Oh! Poor Chef.
Yes, I think he was killed, Mina. And then strung up on that rope.
Who would do that to Chef? Why would they?
Chief?
Lapointe, Jean, in here.
My wife has no part in this. Can't we keep her out of it?
I want you to explain to your wife why you had to kill Jeff Klaas.
There is nothing to explain, and I'd rather not talk about things in front of her, if you don't mind.
Yet you've been using her for years. How ungrateful of you to deny her an explanation.
Is there something to do with the man's death downstairs? Palmari, tell me, Fernand, tell me.
He's trapped me, don't you see? Anything I say...
I never trapped you, you fool. You trapped yourself. It has everything to do with Palmari's death, Mina. Since your husband won't explain, I will. Palmari was a gangster. One form of crime he organized was the stealing of precious stones from the windows of jewelers' shops. Fernand found the shops, and along with Aline Boche, did the contacting and so on. Jeff Klaas cut the precious stones so they could be sold safely.
Chef would not know he was doing wrong.
Agreed. But Fernand here would. I think Palmari has used Jeff for years, 20 years, long before your husband came into the game.
I never had a single suspicion. What a fool I am. But tell me, Monsieur Maigret, why all this murdering?
Aline and your husband became greedy, and they were lovers.
Oh, no.
So, having shot Palmari, they had to cover their tracks. Simple-minded though he was, Klaas could be used to testify against them.
There's not a word of truth in any of it, Mina.
There is, Mina. It's all true. I shall prove it. Some is already proved. What?
I know that your husband and Aline Boche met regularly at a hotel owned by her.
Oh!
Manuel Palmari must have loved her, you know. He gave her so much. This block of flats, the hotel, the restaurant. They would have lived well together, would Aline and her lover. Take him away, Jean.
Okay, Chief. Come on, Bayard. Down we go.
Don't believe them, Mina.
But how can I believe you?
I'll leave you two to do what's necessary.
Right, Chief.
Meet me in Manuel's flat in about half an hour. I'll go there after I've heard Mina's story.
It was near Antwerp, a railway station. I was 4, I think, and with my mother. We were with hundreds of other refugees. Or most of this I found out since. I remember very little. Only as if I'm remembering bits of an old film seen long ago. You understand?
Yes, I understand, Mina.
There was suddenly some terrible explosions and awful screaming and a foul smell. It was an air raid. I've since discovered that it killed half of us. Then the world went black for me, and when I woke I was being nursed by this tall man with a bandage round his head. I never saw my mother again, and when I asked this tall man for her, he didn't reply. I can't compare my childhood with any other childhood, or him to any other foster father. We wandered everywhere. I recall soldiers and police, and living in huts and trains, and once in a cave. If we were questioned, neither of us could understand or reply.
So they left you alone?
Yes.
The name Klaas?
And a piece of paper pinned to my dress. Later we came to Paris, and eventually he obtained a false card as Jeff Klaas, and I became officially his granddaughter. This was at the end of the war.
How did you live?
Jeff had gold coins sewn into his clothes. We never went without, and although he was deaf and dumb and simple in the head, he knew how to survive. After the war, he worked for jewelers, and he found me a job as a salesgirl with one of them.
And that was how you met Fernand?
Yes. Jeff and I had a small house. His workshop was in the garden. And when I married Fernand, we came here. Do you think Fernand married me to...
To keep things in the family? Probably.
I loved Jeff. I owe my life to him. Fernand, I only respected. And Fernand killed him. With that woman.
Well, you'll find somebody else one day, Mina. You know you will. Now I must pay a last visit to that woman.
Ah, here you are, Chief. Janvier and I have told Aline what the score is.
Sit down, Aline. The Chief wants a word with you.
I fooled you, didn't I, Maigret? You thought I couldn't have killed old Manuel.
Manuel fell in love with you, and it's fatal to fall in love with your sort of woman. Gave you everything. Taught you how to behave. Everything. The only thing he didn't have to teach you was how to count. But you didn't actually kill him, did you?
I would have done it. For Fernand, I would.
You and Fernand belonged to the jungle, a beast and his mate. No, you took Manuel's gun, put it in your bag, kissed him goodbye, went out and met Fernand coming from his flat. You gave Fernand the gun and went and did your shopping, while your young lover shot your old lover.
Now you're going to take Fernand to one place and me to another. I hate you, Maigret. I hate you.
Come on,
Give me
She managed to scratch your face quite thoroughly, if I remember rightly.
Yes, I deserved it, for letting them kill old Klaas. From the moment Mina told me she came from Belgium as a little girl, I should have seen the Antwerp connection.
Ah, come, Jules, you're being very hard on yourself.
No, I became too interested in the obvious clues to who killed Manuel. I thought tie that up, and I'd find how the stones were transformed and who the magician was.
The story of Mina Klaas and old Jeff is something apart. A deaf and dumb man, probably of Jewish origin, simple-minded, and a little child, wandering France for some 4 years of the occupation. What a childhood to live through. They would have been entirely in a world of their own, wouldn't they, for their separate reasons. They would never give themselves away. So they survived.
That's true, Georges. And I think that Mina found her true happiness later. She deserved it.
She did. As the others deserved what they got. And I think we deserve a drink. Do you agree?
It had to be a farewell one for the present, Georges.
Why not? We're forever saying farewell to the present, Jules.
In The Patience of Maigret by Georges Simenon, translated by Alistair Hamilton and adapted for radio by Frederick Bradnam, Maigret was played by Maurice Denham and Simenon by Michael Goff. Lapointe, John Rye, Janvier, Sean Barrett, Inspector Clairdon, William Edel, Janin, Malcolm Gerard, Fernand Barrière, Julian Glover, Mina Barrière, Emily Richard, Aline Bosch, Julia Foster, Berenstein, Alan Dudley, Pernell, Malcolm Hayes, the hotel porter, Eric Cotter, and the concierge, Anita Sharp-Bolster. The play was produced and directed by Glenn Dearman.